Chapter 693. Within the lightning pool, purple lightning flashed and electric snakes danced. It possessed an extremely terrifying aura that seemed like it could destroy all living beings. What sort of a method was that? To gather all the divine thunder above the 9 heavens in one place? Thunder was one of the most ferocious powers in the world, and was also the most difficult to control. Cultivating lightning-type cultivation techniques and secret skills was the most dangerous, and one could lose their lives if they were not careful. Legend has it that after the Mahayana realm was the tribulation transcendence realm, where a heavenly tribulation would descend. The heavenly tribulation was formed from thunder and was extremely terrifying. Even the strongest experts of the world, the ancient emperors, might not be able to withstand it. If they couldn't, even patriarchs and emperors who possessed divine power such as rebirth from a single drop of blood would be reduced to ashes. The heavenly tribulation was the pinnacle of the power of thunder. While Su Zimo was pondering, little Fatty had already arrived before the mighty figure of Tomb Sect. Although he was only facing a skeleton, little Fatty did not show any signs of disrespect. Little Fatty knelt down and kowtowed to the mighty figure of Tomb Sect 3 times respectfully, saying in a deep voice, "Senior, I was ordered by the sect master to enter this place, to retrieve the utmost treasure of Tomb Sect, which was left behind by the Underworld Emperor. Please forgive me if I've offended you in any way." Su Zimo's gaze shifted. The mighty figure of Tomb Sect assumed a lotus position with one hand on his knee and the index finger of his other hand on the ground, pointing at a closed painting in front of him. Lin Xuanji's gaze flickered as he fanned the folding fan in his hands and whispered, "If I'm not wrong, this should be the famous Acheron painting of the past. It's said to be a killing weapon that can bury all living beings and annihilate the 6 paths of reincarnation." Unfortunately, when the Underworld Emperor underwent his tribulation transcendence, the Acheron painting of the Acheron painting endured too much of the power of the heavenly tribulation and was almost destroyed. That's why it was reduced to the level of a dermic weapon. "Ah!" Su Zimo exclaimed. "To think that the painting would have such a background." Lin Xuanji continued, "However, even so, this painting is an emperor weapon of the Underworld Emperor. Even if it's severely damaged and its cultivation realm dropped, it's not something that ordinary weapons can compare to." "Emperor weapon?" Su Zimo raised his eyebrows slightly as a trace of doubt flashed across his eyes. He knew that above Dharma artifacts were Dharma treasures. Where did this imperial weapon come from? To put it simply, an imperial weapon is the natal treasure of an imperial weapon. It has an additional layer of imperial aura, and imperial luck, making it even more terrifying. Lin Xuanji explained briefly. Su Zimo was secretly shocked. Just how terrifying was the power of this heavenly tribulation. It actually caused an Emperor Artifact's cultivation level to drop to such a state. Little Fatty's expression was respectful as he reached out with both hands, lifting the yellow springs diagram and unfurling it slowly. Crash! Within the yellow springs diagram, the sound of a river gushing could be heard, whistling through the air. Everyone looked over with rapt attention. In Acheron's painting, there really was a whistling yellow river. The Acheron painting was covered in a layer of mist. It emitted a gloomy and terrifying yellow light that enveloped the entire palace, as if it wanted to annihilate everything. Everyone felt a sense of suffocation. It was not an illusion. Even with Su Zimo's strong physique, he felt a sense of discomfort. "Amazing!" Lin Xuanji exclaimed. "Legend has it that the descent of Acheron can cleanse all weapons in the world. Even perfect-grade weapons will turn into scrap metal if they fall into Acheron's hands. Only Kane-grade weapons can escape unscathed." Su Zimo lamented as well. To think that the Acheron painting can still give off such a frightening aura, even after its cultivation realm has dropped and it has been covered in dust for tens of thousands of years. The Acheron painting hovered above Little Fatty's head. Little Fatty's eyes were tightly shut and his body shuddered. A yellow light shone on his body continuously. It was clear that he was undergoing the baptism of the Acheron painting. Layers of black things appeared on the surface of little Fatty's skin with an incomparably foul stench. Those were the impurities in his body. The mist released by the Acheron painting seeped into little Fatty's body and cleansed his body, expelling as many impurities as possible. This was an opportunity that belonged to little Fatty. No one else had the chance to take it away from him. Lin Xuanji smacked his lips with a hint of envy in his eyes. The water of Acheron? That's good stuff. You're saying that the yellow mist surrounding little Fatty's body is the water of Acheron? Su Zimo asked in disbelief with widened eyes. Acheron was deep underground and had to pass through Hell's Gate and the Bridge of Helplessness. Only the dead would be able to see the Acheron. Who among the living would be able to see the water of Acheron? It can only be considered as a diluted water of Acheron. The power of the yellow mist is at most a billionth of the water of Acheron. Lin Xuanji pursed his lips. Even if there's only a single drop of the true water of Acheron, this Fatty's entire body would turn into pus, let alone cleanse his body. Pausing for a moment, Lin Xuanji's tone changed. However, there's indeed a true Acheron in the Acheron painting. Su Zimo's expression changed. According to the ancient records in Enigma Palace, the reason why the Acheron painting became a true emperor weapon was because the underworld emperor used his divine powers, boldness and fearless determination to barge through Hell's Gate and cross the Bridge of Helplessness to obtain a wisp of Acheron and seal it within. That was how the painting became an emperor weapon in the end. Lin Xuanji said regretfully, of course, given the Fatty's current capabilities, he can't control the painting. Even though its cultivation realm had fallen, the Acheron painting was still a dermic weapon. If little Fatty wanted to control the Acheron painting, he had to advance to nascent soul realm and cultivate an essence spirit so that he could control dermic powers. Everyone stood on the spot and waited silently. They did not want to make any drastic moves that would disrupt little Fatty's opportunity. A full 6 hours passed. Little Fatty's cleansing was finally over. After that baptism, little Fatty had actually slimmed down. The inheritance was not over yet. Splash. Suddenly, a Jean Dan phenomenon appeared behind little Fatty. The turbid yellow river was mighty and rippled with waves, emitting an endless malevolent chi with many corpses floating within. The Acheron phenomenon seemed to have fused with the Acheron painting. The power of the phenomenon was rising continuously. Su Zimo was enlightened. Earlier on, when he saw little Fatty fighting against the corpse refinement cult cultivators, he had a feeling that little Fatty had yet to unleash the true might of the Acheron phenomenon. Acheron's phenomenon was at least in the top 20 of the Jean Dan phenomenon ranking. It was only at this moment that Su Zimo realized that it was not because little Fatty was not talented enough, but because the utmost treasure of Tomb Sect, the Acheron painting, was lost here. The true Acheron painting was within the real Acheron painting. One could only fully comprehend Acheron's aura and release the power of the Acheron phenomenon after sensing the true Acheron's aura. This time round, not only did little Fatty's physique improve after obtaining the Acheron painting, even the power of the Acheron phenomenon would increase exponentially, and there was even a chance for it to regain its former glory. It was yet another long process. An entire day passed before the inheritance came to an end. The Acheron painting floated down and returned to little Fatty's palm. Rumble.
Boom.
Right then, the entire palace shook violently. It was as though a terrifying existence had just awakened from the depths of the ground and wanted to leap out. Lin Xuanji's eyes lit up as he said in a deep voice, "The birth of the dragon vein." Chapter 694. The dragon vein was fortune. Fortune was formless, but the dragon vein was. Roar. A dragon roar sounded. A gigantic and menacing divine dragon burst out of the ground and spiraled into the palace. It reared its head and roared into the skies in a bright and resounding manner. It was not a true dragon or even a phantom of a divine dragon. It was formed entirely from a faintly discernible air current and merely had the shape of a dragon. The dragon vein was deep in the ground. It was because of the Acheron painting that the dragon vein could be suppressed. Now that the Acheron painting had appeared, the dragon vein was finally free from its shackles. The dragon vein was not a true living being. However, it was formed from the fortune of the world. After breaking free, it wanted to charge out of the tomb and return to heaven and earth. Once the dragon vein charged out of the tomb, it would dissipate immediately. Once the fortune returned to heaven and earth, it would be unknown if any of the nearby cultivators would be able to obtain a strand of the dragon vein. All of a sudden, the Acheron painting shone brightly and fluttered without any wind. A murky yellow wave surged out of the painting in a mighty manner and lunged towards the dragon vein in midair, wanting to drag it into the Acheron painting. Roar, roar, roar. The dragon vein roared in midair and struggled repeatedly, wanting to break free from the devouring of the Acheron painting. The two powers were competing. A moment later, the Acheron painting seemed to have realized that it was impossible for it to devour the entire dragon vein. The yellow river gathered in one place and crashed heavily into the dragon vein, breaking it apart and devouring it. The dragon vein dissipated and transformed into a series of dragon-shaped air currents that darted around in midair. Swoosh! Immediately after, the yellow river created a series of gigantic waves and devoured 50% of the dragon vein, forcefully pulling it into the Acheron painting and augmenting Little Fatty endlessly. It was as Lin Xuanji had expected initially. Even with the help of the Acheron painting, Little Fatty could only obtain 50% of the dragon vein at most. Lin Xuanji stood out and declared with a confident smile, "Everyone, I won't stand on ceremony then." Lin Xuanji hung his folding fan casually at his waist and reached out with both hands, channeling his Jin Dan and conjuring a series of hand seals in a dazzling manner. As the spirit arts gathered, a gigantic square chessboard appeared behind Lin Xuanji. It spun continuously and was filled with black and white chess pieces. This chessboard seemed to be able to deduce the secrets of the world. Go! Lin Xuanji extended his finger and pointed ahead. The chessboard continued to expand, covering the top of the palace and blocking out the sun. The chessboard spun slowly, emitting a mysterious aura. In the air, the streams of dragon vein chi scattered everywhere. However, the chessboard completely sealed off their paths. Hee, don't run. Lin Xuanji was all smiles as he continued to use his spirit perception. Beams of spirit light shot out from his fingertips into the chessboard. Some of the dragon vein chi was sucked in by the chessboard and returned to Lin Xuanji's body. Even more dragon vein air currents were like headless flies, darting around the palace. They even brushed past Monkey and the others. Tisk. Lin Ge reached out with his gigantic tiger claw and grabbed a dragon vein chi stream, roaring, "Where do you think you're going?" The dragon vein chi stream was dissipated by his claw. However, he did not receive any providence at all. Monkey, the golden lion, Ching Ching, and Little Fox tried as well, but they could not obtain the dragon vein chi stream. How in the world does this lousy thing work? Lin Ge felt displeased and jealous when he saw Lin Xuanji fighting for the dragon vein chi stream over there. Lin Xuanji could even speak while controlling the chessboard and chuckled smugly. "Brother Tiger, providence depends entirely on one's character. You're not that lucky, haha." In reality, a special secret skill was required to obtain the dragon vein chi stream. The ancestral master of Enigma Palace, Fairy Ling Long, was a person of great providence to begin with. Naturally, she knew how to obtain the dragon vein chi stream and the providence of the world. Monkey and the others were only demon beasts and would not know such things. F***CK. Lin Ge felt like his lungs were about to explode when he saw Lin Xuanji's face. Lin Ge turned to Monkey with a furious expression and asked with grit teeth, "Brother Monkey, can I beat him up?" "Yes," Monkey nodded and continued, "However, I don't think you'll be able to beat him, Lin Ge." Roar. Right at this moment, a roar that caused one's heart to palpitate suddenly resounded within the palace. That roar was extremely similar to the dragon roar just now. However, it was even more frightening and frightening. It was majestic and boundless, sweeping through the 9 heavens and all directions. Compared to that roar, The dragon vein chi stream just now could only be considered as the cry of a newborn dragon. Instinctively, everyone turned towards the sound. Not far away, Su Zimo was motionless, and there was a divine dragon dozens of feet long around him. It had flesh and blood, and was covered in scales that shone with a cold glint. One after another, sharp bone spikes protruded from the back of the divine dragon. Its claws and fangs were menacing, and its horns were towering. Its dragon eyes were cold and dignified as it looked down on all life. Surrounded by the divine dragon, Su Zimo wore green robes, and his black hair danced wildly. His eyes were deep as he hovered in midair. His aura rose continuously as though he was a divine being that ruled over the world. This mystical dragon seemed to be just a pet by his side. Monkey, Lingo, and the others were rather calm after witnessing Su Zimo's methods in the battle of the ancient city. However, Little Fatty and Shijian were dumbfounded. Even Lin Xuanji was dumbfounded and froze on the spot, forgetting to release his spirit art. A moment later, he exclaimed, "That's the secret skill of the human emperor, the ancient dragonification manual." Su Zimo nodded. It was no wonder why Enigma Palace was a supersect of Tianhuang mainland and was even related to the human emperor. Among his peers, Lin Xuanji was the only one who recognized the ancient dragonification manual. Roar, roar, roar. Right after the appearance of the ancient dragonification manual, the dragon vein currents that were initially running amok in the palace surged towards Su Zimo's body wildly, as though they had found a home. It was extremely majestic, like rivers flowing into the sea. Fu *K. Lin Xuanji's eyes reddened when he realized what was going on. The reason why he came here painstakingly without taking any treasures was because he wanted to obtain the dragon vein here. In the end, Su Zimo was the one who took advantage of the situation. "Su Zimo, I'll fight it out with you." Lin Xuanji shrieked and channeled Jin Dan with all his might. The speed at which he conjured hand seals increased, and his spirit energy surged. A powerful suction force burst forth from the chessboard above the palace. However, the stronger the suction force, the faster the dragon vein currents in the palace surged towards Su Zimo. In less than 10 minutes, 40% of the remaining 50% of the dragon vein was snatched away by Su Zimo, leaving only 10% to enter Lin Xuanji's body. Ha ha ha. To think that such a day would come for you. Lin Xuanji burst into laughter when he saw how exasperated Lin Xuanji was. "Well done, bro. Piss him off." Little Fox snickered and remarked at the right time, "Young Master Lin, your character is terrible." In reality, releasing the ancient dragonification manual was merely a flash of inspiration on Su Zimo's part. To think that the release of the secret skill would truly allow Lin Xuanji to snatch 40% of the dragon vein. On the one hand, the dragon vein currents were close to the aura of the ancient dragonification manual to begin with. On the other hand, this was the secret skill of the human emperor after all, and was a creation of heaven and earth. It was not surprising that it could snatch the fortune of Lin Xuanji. Chapter 695. The dragon vein, that was formed from the providence of tens of thousands of years, was gradually split between Little Fatty, Su Zimo, and Lin Xuanji. Little Fatty made use of Tomb Sek's utmost treasure, Acheron diagram, to obtain 50%. With the help of the ancient dragonification manual, Su Zimo obtained as much as 40%. Lin Xuanji risked his life and released the secret skill of Enigma Palace, but only managed to obtain 10% in the end. In the mortal world, if a vassal state were to occupy a dragon vein, they could even expand rapidly and develop into a dynasty that ruled over a region. Providence was something that was ethereal and would not increase one's strength immediately upon obtaining it. However, it would have a significant impact on a cultivator's future. The more providence one had, the more opportunities one would encounter. In fact, one might even be able to turn misfortunes into blessings and change one's fate. Lin Xuanji gripped his fists tightly and glared at Su Zimo furiously. Shuddering in anger, he grit his teeth and said, "Su Zimo, you're truly a jinx." Su Zimo shrugged with an innocent expression. Little Fox smiled. Young Master Lin, you are the one who said that the dragon vein would belong to whoever can obtain it based on their own capabilities. You definitely won't regret it. I don't regret it. I don't regret it. Lin Xuanji panted heavily and lamented. But I do. Monkey and the others watched the commotion from the side and burst into laughter, gloating over Lin Xuanji's misfortune. In their hearts, they naturally hoped that Su Zimo would obtain the dragon vein. I've realized that nothing good ever happens when I meet you. Lin Xuanji sighed and felt even more depressed when he recalled the first time they met in the Dragon Bone Valley. It was the same back then. That dragon egg was initially his. Who would have thought that it would be eaten by this seemingly weak scholar and a harmless dog? Screech, screech, screech. Lin Xuanji stomped his feet in anger at the thought of what happened back then. Lin Xuanji rushed in front of Su Zimo and asked hatefully, "Where's that big black dog? Where did it go? I haven't seen it for so many years. I have to get closer to it." Su Zimo spread out his hands and smiled. "If you're not by my side, your plan will fail." Su Zimo could tell at a glance that Lin Xuanji was eyeing Night Spirit again. What bad luck! Lin Xuanji wanted nothing more than to slap himself twice as he glared at Su Zimo resentfully. "Once we leave this place, we will part ways. I will definitely stay away from you in the future. I've finally realized that everything in this world has its own counter. You're here specifically to counter me." Su Zimo coughed gently and patted Lin Xuanji on the shoulder, pretending to be serious. "What's there to talk about? It's so hurtful." "Humph." Lin Xuanji rolled his eyes. At this moment, a sigh suddenly sounded in the void. The next moment, the palace fell into a dead silence. Everyone stood on the spot motionlessly, as though their limbs were bound by an invisible force. Their expressions froze on their faces, and their eyes shone with confusion, shock, and fear. A faint might enveloped them. Against that might, everyone was as insignificant as ants. There was another existence in this palace, an existence that was far stronger than everyone present. A sinister wind gusted. The temperature of the entire palace dipped. Everyone's hair stood on end, feeling chills run down their spines. "Ah!" Little Fox was afraid and reverted to her true form, burrowing into Su Zimo's embrace, shivering in fear. Even burly men like Ling Hu and the Golden Lion felt chills run down their spines and their legs tremble, let alone her. "May I know which senior you are? Can you show yourself?" Su Zimo took a deep breath of air and surveyed his surroundings, asking in a deep voice. The aura given off by that existence was extremely frightening. In fact, it could kill anyone in the palace with ease, including him. Instead of being flustered, he might as well stand out and have a face-to-face chat with that existence. After so many years, someone's finally here. This voice rang out again, and it was filled with endless sighs and emotions. When the crowd heard this, they were all shaken to the core. In this palace, there was only one possibility for someone to say something like this. Everyone turned towards the voice. The withered skeleton that was originally sitting in front of the lightning pool suddenly moved in a strange manner. Perhaps because it had not moved for tens of thousands of years, the skeleton let out creaking sounds as though it could fall apart at any moment. In the next moment, under everyone's watchful eyes, the skeleton actually stood up. "Psst!" Everyone gasped. The golden fur on the Golden Lion's body stood on end, and his entire body expanded. Monkey, Ling Hu, and the others felt their hearts nearly jump out of their throats. Lin Xuanji placed one hand behind his back and his fingers danced rapidly as he deduced. Su Zimo narrowed his gaze and was rather calm. He wasn't dead. To think that the mighty figure of Tomb sect from tens of thousands of years ago was still alive. The mighty figure of Tomb sect stood up. The robes that were originally draped over his body could not withstand the corrosion of time and turned into dust instantly, disappearing into thin air. There was no flesh on the skeleton. However, there was a faint glow on its glabella that flickered with a hint of life force. Crack, 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 crack. The The skeleton turned its head and surveyed everyone with its pair of empty sockets. Eventually, it paused on Su Zimo for a moment before shifting its gaze away. Su Zimo felt a strange feeling in his heart. Although the mighty figure of Tomb Sect did not have eyes, he could vaguely sense that the mighty figure was looking at him strangely, as though the mighty figure was placing some sort of hope on him. Su Zimo's spirit perception could not sense any enmity from the mighty figure of Tomb Sect. Of course, if an expert of that level wanted to kill everyone, he could deceive the heavenly secrets with a single thought, let alone Su Zimo's spirit perception. Su Zimo glanced sideways at Lin Xuanji, who was at the side. At that moment, there was no hint of panic in Lin Xuanji's eyes as well. Su Zimo gradually relaxed. The skeleton walked down the steps and arrived before Little Fatty. It gazed at the Acheron portrait in Little Fatty's hands in a daze without saying anything. Little Fatty was so scared that he was about to cry. After a while, the skeleton extended its palm and placed it on the Yellow Springs diagram. Bit by bit, it gently brushed past the diagram. It was more like a farewell. Little Fatty was facing Kugu. He was scared to death, so how could he feel so much? He held the Acheron portrait with both hands, not knowing if he should hand it over or not. Senior, I was also entrusted by the elders of my sect to come here and retrieve this utmost treasure of Tomb Sect. I didn't know that you were still alive, Senior. Little Fatty sounded like he was about to cry. Senior, although I have a lot of meat on me, I don't taste good. He was completely scared out of his wits. Fatty. Su Zimo hollered softly. At that moment, Su Zimo used the secret skill of Sanskrit of the Buddhist monasteries, and it had the effect of enlightening the other party. Little Fatty had already lost his mind completely. If he could not wake up and leave a shadow in his heart, he would be at risk of chi deviation in his future cultivation. Little Fatty's cries stopped abruptly as he widened his beady eyes in a daze. Fatty, wake up. Su Zimo said in a deep voice, if that senior wanted to harm you, he would have done so long ago. Why would he let you take away the Acheron portrait and leave the dragon vein here to you? When he heard that, Little Fatty's mind cleared up and his initially restless mind calmed down. The skeleton looked deeply at Su Zimo and nodded. Chapter 696. Although that action seemed subtle, it was a form of acknowledgement. Or rather, the mighty figure of Tomb Sect was expressing his gratitude to Su Zimo. This treasure has followed me for more than 10,000 years. To think that I would still let it gather dust in the end, the skeleton retracted his palm and looked at Little Fatty. Keep this Acheron painting well. When you advance to the nascent soul realm in the future, refine it as your destiny dermic weapon. Even if you can't restore it to its former glory, you have to repair it and return to the realm of a dermic treasure. The prerequisite for the Acheron painting to become a dermic treasure was for Little Fatty to advance to the Mahayana realm. However, the Mahayana realm was extremely difficult. Even this paragon who was once the titular disciple of Tomb Sect did not manage to take that step in the end. Don't worry, Senior, I'll do my best. Little Fatty nodded vigorously and put away the Acheron painting solemnly. Surveying the surroundings, the skeleton looked at Linghu, Ching Ching and the others who were still nervous and said slowly, you guys don't have to be afraid. I've already died a long time ago, and what's left in this skeleton is merely a remnant consciousness of mine. 50,000 years ago, I failed to break through to the Mahayana realm, and my lifespan was almost up. As such, I could only set up this astral dragon sputum lair and wait for my descendants. Everyone was a little confused when they heard this. Since he was already dead, how could a remnant consciousness survive till now? As though he could sense everyone's confusion, the skeleton explained, this remnant consciousness of mine made use of this tomb to fuse into the dragon vein and deceive the heavenly secrets. That's why I was able to survive. Now that the dragon vein has been absorbed, I'm about to die as well. Everyone was enlightened. The skeleton continued, the reason why I left this remnant consciousness behind was to prevent the Acheron painting from falling into the hands of outsiders. The final test of the great necropolis is me. When they heard that, Everyone had conflicted expressions and felt a sense of lingering fear. The meaning behind the skeleton's words was clear. If anyone among them harbored ill intentions earlier on and wanted to lay their hands on the Acheron painting, they would have been dead by now. Even a remnant consciousness of a conjoined body mighty figure was enough to kill anyone present. Su Zimo's mouth twitched. The mighty figure of Tom's sect could no longer be described as merely meticulous. This was already considered abnormal. Who would have thought that after passing so many tests, there would be a final test? It was also the most terrifying and deadly test. Su Zimo's heart stirred as he looked at Lin Xuanji beside him. There was no surprise in Lin Xuanji's eyes, as though he had expected this. As expected, Su Zimo laughed in his heart. What a thief! When Su Zimo first entered this place and noticed that nothing in the palace had been touched, he was confused. Was Lin Xuanji really that good? Only now did he understand. This Lin Xuanji must have expected this to happen. Dry Bones turned around and arrived in front of Su Zimo. You have 4 completely different auras. Skeleton said slowly, immortal sex, Buddhist sex, fiend sex, and demonic qi. Yes. Su Zimo nodded. Naturally, there was no way he could hide his secrets from conjoint body mighty figures. Good, very good. Dry Bones nodded repeatedly, seemingly pleased. The skeleton took out an ancient book from the stone shelf at the side and gently wiped off the dust on it before handing it to Su Zimo. Take this book. If you can fulfill my unfulfilled wish, it will definitely bring blessings to the world and bring blessings to the masses. Su Zimo received the ancient book and flipped it open gently. After a brief glance, his expression changed gradually. In this ancient book, there were records of how mortals without a spirit root could cultivate, and how to condense a golden core, and how to attempt it. Of course, all of those methods ended in failure. However, there were many insights and conclusions at the back of every single method. Su Zimo was touched when he witnessed Su Hong's lifespan being depleted and the corpses of the citizens of Yen country floating in the wilderness with worthless lives. He swore a grand wish to establish a Tao and change the fates of the masses. To others, this ancient book was practically a waste of paper. However, it was way too important for Su Zimo. Those failed attempts and methods were all precious experiences left behind by predecessors. It would save him a lot of time and effort. Skeleton said, I've spent most of my effort on this for more than 20,000 years of my life. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to create a path. If you have that intention, you can only continue on this path. If even you can't do it, this will probably be a dead end. Su Zimo was an immortal, Buddhist, fiend, and demonic cultivator. If even he could not create a path and create a new great Tao, no one else in this world would be qualified to do so. Of course, given Su Zimo's current cultivation realm, his horizons and knowledge were limited, and he was far from being able to establish a Tao. Su Zimo bowed deeply to the skeleton and said sincerely, Thank you, Senior. This ancient book is extremely important to me. All right. The skeleton nodded, and the light on its glabella dimmed. After pondering for a moment, the skeleton turned and pointed to the electric pool that shone with purple light not far away. That's the purple electric pool. It can be used to refine one's body and weapons. There's an ancient scroll in the center of the electric pool. It's a cultivation technique from the Void Thunder Manual called the Purple Thunder Manual. It's a heaven-grade cultivation technique and contains everything. Apart from spirit refinement techniques, there are many other dermic arts. Take it. When he heard that, Su Zimo was delighted. Cultivation techniques and dermic arts could be divided into 4 grades: heaven, earth, mystic, and yellow. For example, Misty Peak did not even have any mystic grade cultivation techniques or dermic arts. Only aristocratic families and upper sects possessed mystic grade cultivation techniques and dermic arts. As for earth grade cultivation techniques and dermic arts, only the super sects possessed them, and they were all secrets that were difficult to spread. Although there were many cultivation techniques and dermic arts on the stone shelves in the palace, Su Zimo took a look around and saw that they were all yellow grade. Even if there were mystic grades, they existed separately and did not form a system. But now, there was a heaven-grade cultivation technique right in front of Suzumo. This was a heavenly opportunity. Furthermore, this was a scroll of the Void Thunder Manual. To begin with, Suzumo possessed the power of thunder within his body, and it would be much easier for him to cultivate. Everything was prepared, and the only thing left was for Suzumo to advance to Nascent Soul before he could cultivate the Purple Thunder Manual. Lin Xuanji's eyes reddened once more. It must be the effect of the dragon vein. Lin Xuanji wanted to cry, but no tears came out as he lamented internally. Otherwise, this opportunity would have most likely been mine. The skeleton turned around and returned to the steps, sitting down slowly, with a relaxed expression. I can finally leave in peace. You guys are doing well, very well. With that said, the light on the skeleton's glabella dimmed completely. Without the support of the mighty figure's power, the skeleton collapsed and turned into dust as well. Suzumo sighed gently, with a lamenting expression. Legend has it that conjoint body mighty figures had lifespans of more than 20,000 years. However, the mighty figure of Tomb Sect was able to unleash such a heaven-defying ability. Using such a method, he continued to exist in this world for another 50,000 years to witness the scene today. It was only at this moment that all traces of him vanished from this world. At the same time, everyone bowed deeply towards the cloud of dust.
It was respect.
It was also a final farewell. Chapter 697. The purple thunder pool shone with crackling electricity and had an extremely terrifying aura. Suzumo said, "This thunder pool can temper one's body. Those who can withstand it, come in and cultivate. However, you have to be careful. The power of thunder is the most dangerous. If you feel that something is amiss, leave as soon as possible. Don't force yourself." I was waiting for you to say that. Lin Xuanji laughed strangely. He had only obtained 10% of the dragon vein on this trip and naturally wanted to compensate as much as he could. The little fox leaped out of Suzumo's embrace hurriedly and pouted her lips, shaking her head. Most demons had powerful physical bodies, but there were some exceptions. The cultivation of the fox race was not focused on their bodies. This was not something that could be forced. Suzumo nodded and led the way. There was a saying in the mortal world that one could not cross the thunder pool. The thunder pool represented danger and destruction. Suzumo entered the purple thunder pool and shuddered. The thunder pool shone brightly and released a bedazzling flash of electricity. One after another, purple arcs of electricity extended and surged into Suzumo's body wildly. Suzumo took a deep breath of air and headed towards the depths of the purple thunder pool. Lin Xuanji followed closely behind and charged in. The moment he entered the thunder pool, a look of pain flashed through his eyes. However, he endured it immediately after. The more pain one endured in the thunder pool, the greater the changes one's body would undergo. The power outside the thunder pool was rather peaceful. The closer one was to the center of the thunder pool, the more berserk the power of thunder became, as though it wanted to destroy everything. Bolts of electricity surged and engulfed everything. One could only truly experience the wrath of thunder at the center of the thunder pool. Monkey, the Linghu, the Golden Lion, and Qing Qing followed behind Lin Xuanji. The four of them were demons that valued their physiques greatly. There was naturally no way they would miss out on an opportunity as such. Initially, Little Fatty and Shi Jian did not intend to enter. However, when they saw everyone rush in, including Lin Xuanji, the two of them were tempted as though the thunder pool did not seem strong. "Should we wait outside the thunder pool for a while?" Shi Jian suggested. "Yes." Little Fatty rolled his eyes and said, "I think that's fine. As long as we don't go too deep into the lightning pool, there shouldn't be any danger."
Go.
The two of them moved and rushed into the lightning pool.
Ah!
Just as they charged into the lightning pool, the two of them let out a series of miserable shrieks. Shi Jian was in the most miserable state. His skin was split open, and his flesh was exposed. Smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices, and even his hair stood on end. Their puppet sex forte was body refinement. Shi Jian took advantage of the time before he was electrocuted and hurriedly escaped. His face was covered in dust and dirt. The little fox sniffed and said suspiciously, "Strange. Why is there a meaty smell?" Hearing this, Shi Jian almost vomited a mouthful of black blood. Little Fatty's situation was slightly better than Shi Jianqiang's. After all, before this, his body had just been cleansed by the mist emitted from Acheron's painting, so he wasn't injured by the electricity. Even so, little Fatty was in excruciating pain. The fat all over his body trembled and twitched. "Aren't I just looking for trouble?" Little Fatty lamented internally. "I'm eating well, sleeping well, and my body is great. Why must I make things difficult for myself?" It didn't take long for little Fatty to retreat. Right now, there were only 6 people left in the lightning pool: Su Zimo, Lin Xuanji, Monkey, Ling Hu, the Golden Lion, and Qing Qing. Although they were all in the lightning pool, everyone's positions were different. It was also clear that there was a difference between the 6 of them. Su Zimo had already arrived at the center of the lightning pool and assumed a lotus position. His blood qi surged as he absorbed the berserk power of thunder around him to refine his body. To his surprise, Lin Xuanji was the closest to the center of the lightning pool. It was no wonder why he was the successor of Enigma Palace. He had endless methods and unfathomable strength. Even his physique was frightening. Monkey was slightly behind Lin Xuanji. After Monkey was Ling Hu. In reality, Ling Hu's bloodline was the most ordinary among everyone present. Thankfully, he cultivated the marrow cleansing section of the Void Thunder Manual and was able to change his bloodline. Earlier on, he managed to fuse 4 bone claws of unknown origin into his body by accident. Ling Hu's physique was changing silently as well. After Ling Hu, it was the Golden Lion and Qing Qing. The 6 of them found their limits in the lightning pool and sat on the ground, beginning to absorb thunder into their bodies to cultivate. A beast hide hovered in the center of the lightning pool. Su Zimo reached out and took the beast hide, opening it gently. At the top of the beast hide were 3 words: Purple Thunder Manual. This was a section of the Void Thunder Manual created by the Thunder Emperor and was a heaven-grade cultivation technique. After advancing to Nascent Soul Realm, if one could cultivate a heaven-grade cultivation technique, not only would their cultivation speed be terrifying, their essence spirits would also be countless times stronger than those of yellow-grade cultivation techniques. It was like the difference between heaven and earth. A stronger essence spirit meant that more dermic powers could be mobilized. Su Zimo skimmed through it briefly before putting the Purple Thunder Manual into his storage bag carefully. This cultivation technique was going to be his greatest reliance on the immortal Tao after advancing to Nascent Soul Realm. At the same time, Su Zimo was extremely curious about the Yin Spirit section of the Mystic Classic of the 12 Demon Kings of the Great Wilderness. After the Core Formation section was the Yin Spirit section that corresponded to the Nascent Soul Realm of the immortal Tao. Without cultivating a Yin Spirit, Su Zimo could not see the cultivation techniques of the Yin Spirit section. In Su Zimo's opinion, the Yin Spirit section that Daiyu imparted to him was definitely a heaven-grade cultivation technique. However, he did not know what level it could reach. Furthermore, Daiyu imparted to him the Mystic Classic of the 12 Demon Kings. Up till this point, he had only cultivated 7 Demon Kings, and there were 5 more that had yet to appear. Su Zimo was filled with anticipation to see if another Demon King would descend for the Yin Spirit section. As he sensed the berserk power of thunder around him, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat, and he withdrew 27 supreme-grade flying swords from his storage bag. Those were a set of flying swords for the Candlelight Sword Formation. Prior to this, supreme-grade flying swords were tainted by the blood of powerful demon beasts, and their powers would decrease after a while. Su Zimo was also considering how he could upgrade the set of flying swords. Right now, he could truly refine the 27 flying swords with the help of this lightning pool. Although he could not upgrade their grades, the power of thunder on the swords would increase their power. The power of the 27 flying swords would increase even more when they were stacked together. The increase in power of the candlelight sword formation would be considerable after it was formed. Su Zima waved his hand, and the 27 flying swords scattered around him. Placed in the purple thunder pool, the swords shone with streaks of lightning. Everyone who entered the great necropolis obtained their own opportunities. At that moment, a group of cultivators arrived above the tomb. There were thousands of them. Their leader was skinny like a bamboo pole. With a cold expression, he stood in midair and looked down at the terrain below with a flickering gaze. Chapter 698. Fellow Taoist Lungming, is this ground beneath our feet where the tomb is? Behind the skinny cultivator, another man walked forward with a haughty expression. His eyes flickered with lightning and his aura was terrifying. That person had a sect badge on his waist with the words Zephyr Thunder written on it. The person who spoke was Su Cheng, a legacy disciple of Zephyr Thunder Palace, one of the 9 immortal sections. Su Cheng was also the leader of the 1,000-odd disciples of Zephyr Thunder Palace that entered the ancient battlefield. That skinny cultivator was the other legacy disciple of Tomb Sect for this expedition, Lung Ming. Withdrawing a geomantic compass from his robes, Lung Ming began to calculate. After a while, he nodded. There should be no mistake. This is where the tomb is. Looking down from above, Lung Ming looked at the terrain beneath his feet, and an enlightened look flashed through his eyes as he nodded. So, it's the astral dragon's sputum lair. No wonder it's so secretive. Since we've found the tomb, let's head down, Su Cheng said. There's no need for that. Lung Ming shook his head. The dragon vein here has already dissipated, and someone has gotten here before us. There's no need for us to barge in. Let's just wait outside quietly. All right, Su Cheng nodded and surveyed his surroundings, declaring loudly on purpose, the other treasures in the tomb are secondary. I'm bent on getting my hands on one of the cultivation techniques. Nobody can snatch it from me. It's the legendary Purple Thunder Manual, right? Another voice sounded from behind the two of them. A man with a deathly aura arrived beside the two of them. He was extremely ugly with a pale face and purplish lips, resembling a devil from hell. Behind the man, there was a giant that looked like an iron tower. It was at least 10 meters tall. The giant was covered from head to toe in a silver-white fur coat. Even its mouth and nose were covered. Even so, the giant emitted a faint rotting stench and was filled with a deathly aura. That ugly man was the legacy disciple of corpse refinement cult for this expedition, Situshur. The giant behind him was his battle corpse. Situshur said, "Don't think that I don't know that many of the powerful dermic arts of Zephyr Thunder Palace can't be released because the Purple Thunder Manual is missing." A trace of disdain flashed across the depths of Su Cheng's eyes as he asked indifferently, "Brother Situ, I'm afraid this trip is not just for revenge, right? That cultivator from the puppet sect killed a disciple of my corpse refinement cult. Of course I have to kill him." Situshur said coldly, "I want a share of the treasures in this great tomb. Fellow Taoist Lung Ming, I've brought hundreds of cultivators from my sect to help you. I naturally want a share of the treasures in this tomb." Another cultivator stood out. He wore a white Taoist robe, and his sleeves fluttered in the wind. This person was Nie Hao, a true disciple of the Hunyuan sect, one of the 9 immortal sects. The leader of the Primordial Chaos sect disciples this time was the top of the Jin Dan phenomenon ranking. He was also recognized as the number 1 person in Jin Dan, Diyin. Under the halo of Diyin's fame, Nie Hao is naturally easily overlooked. However, in reality, Nie Hao is extremely strong and had cultivated the legacy phenomenon of Primordial Chaos sect. If not for the fact that there was a monster incarnate like Diyin, he would have been the leader of the Primordial Chaos sect disciples. Lung Ming smiled gently. "Don't worry, the 3 of you. I'll only take away the legacy utmost treasure of Tomb sect. The 3 of you can split the rest of the treasures with your disciples." Lung Ming looked down at the ground and smiled indifferently with extreme confidence, as though his gaze could penetrate all obstacles. This time round, in order to prevent any accidents, he sought help from Zephyr Thunder Palace and Chaos Essence Sect. Along the way, Corpse Refinement Cult, one of the 5 heretical doctrines, joined in as well. With the backing of those 3 super sects, Lung Ming believed that the Acheron painting was already his. My dear junior brother, I heard that you've found some helpers as well. Let's see what sort of characters you've found. Fufufu. Within the Great Tomb. Lin Xuanji, Monkey, Linghu, the Golden Lion and Qing Qing had already left the Purple Thunder Pool one after another. Su Zimo was the last to leave. On the one hand, it was because his physique could withstand the tempering of thunder for a longer period of time. On the other hand, he wanted to refine his sword formation. Right now, his sword formation was at greater mastery. Although these 27 flying swords were still supreme-grade flying swords, they carried streaks of purple lightning on them. Apart from the sharpness of the swords, there was also a hint of ferocity from the thunder that could suppress evil. Su Zimo frowned slightly and said in a deep voice, "Fatty, put away all the treasures here. Let's leave this place as soon as possible. I have a vague feeling that something's amiss." Yes, little Fatty nodded. It was way too strange that his senior brother, Lung Ming, had not appeared the entire time. Furthermore, they had stayed in the Great Tomb for quite some time. If they continued, something else might happen. Little Fatty walked along the stone shelves and kept all the treasures in his storage bag. Apart from some of the treasures that were useful to him, he would hand over the rest to the sect. That was a huge contribution. With such a huge contribution and the recognition of Acheron's painting, little Fatty's status would definitely surpass Lung Ming's even though he joined the sect later. Let's go. After sweeping away all the treasures here, little Fatty waved his hand and called for everyone to return the way they came. Unlike when they entered, they did not encounter any obstructions on their way back. Even the ancient frost sharks and bloodthirsty silverfishes seemed to have hidden themselves. Everyone entered the pool and rose continuously. When they were dozens of feet away from the water surface, Su Zimo's eyes flashed coldly as he whispered, "Everyone watch out. There are many people above." Fufu. The mantis stalks the cicada. Unaware of the oriole behind, Lin Xuanji chuckled. "Fatty, your senior brother is probably here already." Lin Xuanji had a relaxed expression. Su Zimo sneered, "It's not that easy to be the oriole." Splash. Before long, waves surged in the lake and Su Zimo's group rushed out one after another, standing in midair. A circle of cultivators surrounded the lake with murderous auras. There were thousands of them, and every single one of them had endless greed in their eyes. For cultivators stood in the 4 directions of north, south, east, and west, looking down with torrential auras. They were none other than Tomb Sect's Lung Ming, Zephyr Thunder Palace's Su Cheng, Corpse Refinement Cult's Situ Shi, and Chaos Essence Sect's Nia Hao. "Senior brother, you're here indeed." Little Fatty glared at a skinny cultivator and grit his teeth. "Fufu." Lung Ming smiled gently. "Junior brother, it's truly beyond my expectations that you're able to find this place first." However, Lung Ming changed the topic and retracted his smile, shaking his head. "However, everything you've done is futile, and you're just paving the way for me. You're still too inexperienced to compete with me. Senior brother, the Patriarch has decreed that whoever obtains the Acheron painting will win. You've already lost this competition between us." Little Fatty said darkly. The crowd exclaimed when they heard the words Acheron painting. That was a renowned emperor weapon that had followed the underworld emperor for many years. Even though its cultivation realm had fallen, it was still a rare utmost treasure. Even Su Cheng, Situ Shi, and Nia Hao's eyes flickered with excitement. "How naive." Lung Ming shook his head with a mocking gaze. "Junior brother, you're still as naive as ever. Without refining it into a destiny-dermic weapon, the Acheron painting is an ownerless item. Naturally, I can snatch it away." Chapter 699. The commotion here was not small, and there were already many cultivators in the vicinity who were rushing over. Situ Shi frowned slightly and said in a deep voice, "Hurry up and resolve this matter. Don't let others take advantage of us." Lung Ming nodded and glared at little Fatty with a dark gaze, saying slowly, "Junior brother, don't say that I'm not being considerate. I'll give you two options.
Choose.
The first option is to hand over the Acheron painting and all the treasures in the tomb, and I'll spare your life. The second option. There's no need to say any more. Before Lung Ming could finish, he was interrupted by Little Fatty. Little Fatty gripped his fists tightly and said word by word, I'll definitely not hand over the Acheron painting to you. He had taken a huge risk to find it with his own capabilities. Why should he hand it over to Lung Ming? Good, good, good. Lung Ming nodded with endless killing intent in his eyes as he said coldly, This is the path you chose. Don't blame me for being merciless. Retrieving his flying sword from his storage bag, Little Fatty's expression was firm, and there was no hint of fear on his face. Lung Ming's gaze shifted and swept past Su Zimo and the others one by one. His eyes were filled with mockery as he sneered, Junior brother, I have to say that you've truly grown. To think that you know how to get help. You've truly impressed me. However, these 2 or 3 people and a few animals are what you rely on. When Monkey and the others heard the word beasts, their eyes were filled with rage and ferocity. Ling Hu glared at Lung Ming with a murderous expression and chuckled. Little Bamboo, you'd better run quickly later. Don't get caught by me, otherwise, humph. Lung Ming chuckled and asked instead, Junior brother, you can't be so naive as to think that you can fight against me with these few small fries, right? Small fries? Little Fatty laughed as well. There were only 9 of them. Apart from Monkey, Ling Hu, Ching Ching, Little Fox, and the Golden Lion who were demons. Which of the other 4 were small fries? He was a legacy disciple of Tomb Sect. Shi Jian was a true disciple of the puppet school. Lin Xuanji was the successor of Enigma Palace. Although Su Zimo did not belong to any sect, there was probably no one in the ancient battlefield who would dare to call him a nobody. Not to mention anything else, just the name Su Zimo was enough to scare a group of people to death. What? You don't believe me? Lung Ming roared in laughter. Since that's the case, let me introduce you to the true paragons of Tianhuang mainland before you die so that you can die with a clear understanding. This is Corpse Refinement Cult's true disciple, Situ Shi. Situ Shi's eyes were cold. He looked at Shi Jian as if he was looking at a dead man. Shi Jian said in a low voice, Leave him to me. Lin Xuanji whispered, Although that person did not cultivate the Jin Dan phenomenon, he is not weak. That 30 feet tall battle corpse behind him is already showing signs of evolving into a silver corpse. The battle corpses of Corpse Refinement Cult were divided into several grades. The lowest grade was the dead corpse and was the weakest. It could be sliced apart by swords, sabers, water, and fire. The next grade was the iron corpse, and after that was the bronze corpse. Normally speaking, the perfected being Jin Dan of Corpse Refinement Cult controlled the bronze corpse. Above the bronze corpse was the silver corpse. Lung Ming pointed to another person and smiled leisurely. This fellow Taoist is Nia Hao of Chaos Essence Sect, one of the 9 immortal sects. Chaos Essence Sect. Su Zimo murmured softly as an emperor-like figure flashed through his mind. Chaos Essence Sect, Diin. That person was indeed frightening, and was the strongest enemy Su Zimo had encountered up till this point of his cultivation. Lin Xuanji said casually, This person is Di Yin's junior brother. However, he's suppressed greatly by Di Yin's reputation. He's rather capable as well. Su Zimo did not know much about the paragons of the super sections. However, Lin Xuanji knew them like the back of his hand. Su Zimo turned around and said to Lin Xuanji, You make it sound so easy. I'll leave this person to you. Don't worry. Lin Xuanji waved it off and pouted his lips. I'm not on the same side as you guys. You guys have taken all the benefits in this tomb. I merely got some leftovers. Young Master Lin, you're not thinking of running away, are you? Little Fox wanted to agitate Lin Xuanji, but the latter did not care about her attempt at running away. Lin Xuanji did not even blush as he said seriously, A gentleman does not stand beside a collapsing wall. Don't worry, I'll definitely be the first to run when the battle starts later and not cause trouble for you guys. This is the number 1 of the 9 immortal sects, Zephyr Thunder Palace, Su Cheng. Lung Ming's voice sounded once more, and he left Su Cheng's introduction at the end. The crowd watching nearby exclaimed when they heard that name. Lin Xuanji's expression turned solemn for once as he said in a deep voice, "This person is extremely strong." Legend has it that he cultivated the highest legacy phenomenon of Zephyr Thunder Palace, apocalyptic 5 thunders. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes. In the previous Jin Dan phenomenon ranking, the successor of Zephyr Thunder Palace was ranked 9th, and his phenomenon was Apocalyptic 4 Thunders. Behind the Jin Dan phenomenon, there was a clear description that the highest level of Jin Dan was 5 Divine Thunders that possess the power to destroy the world. 4 Divine Thunders were enough for him to be ranked in the top 10 of the phenomenon ranking. How terrifying was that person's combat strength if he could condense 5 Divine Thunders? Lin Xuanji continued, "That person's combat strength can enter the top 5, or even top 3 of the phenomenon ranking. The reason why he's here this time round is to compete with Di'in." Su Zimo nodded. Lin Xuanji reminded again, "Don't underestimate your opponent. Although you have a double phenomenon, your double phenomenon might not be able to fight against that person's 5 Divine Thunders at the same time." Su Zimo frowned. Up till this point of his cultivation, he had yet to encounter a Jin Dan phenomenon that could fight against his double phenomenon. At the very most, the other party would be in a stalemate with one of his phenomenons. Once the other phenomenon was released, the other party would definitely be defeated, without a doubt. To think that he would encounter such a ruthless character before he even arrived at Myriad Phenomenon City. Lung Ming looked at Little Fatty and asked with a fake smile, "Why don't you introduce the helpers you found so that we can broaden our horizons?" A series of chuckles could be heard from the crowd of Corpse Refinement Cult, Chaos Essence Sect, and Zephyr Thunder Palace. Situ Shi and Nye Hao had arrogant expressions. Su Cheng stood with his hands behind his back and looked into the skies, not even bothering to look at Su Zimo and the others. Given the current situation, he could settle it without even making a move. They knew most of the paragons of the super sections. Apart from Little Fatty and Shi Jian, who were from super sects, the other 2 were strangers. They were either itinerant cultivators or disciples of small sects who were here to join in the fun and broaden their horizons. Lin Xuanji had already put on a mask before he left the tomb, so Situ Shi and the others naturally could not recognize him. Little Fatty harumphed and pointed to Lin Xuanji beside him. "This is..." Lin Xuanji waved it off hurriedly and said with a cheeky smile, "I'm just a nobody. There's no need to introduce me. I'll leave in a while. You guys can fight, it's none of my business. Ha ha ha." The crowd burst into laughter. Lung Ming held back his laughter and pointed to the green-robed cultivator beside Lin Xuanji with a mocking gaze. "Who is this? Junior brother, hurry and introduce him to us." Little Fatty was about to speak when the green-robed cultivator spoke first and said indifferently, "My name is Su Zimo." The laughter of the crowd stopped abruptly. It was as though all the cultivators were choked by their throats. Chapter 700. After a brief silence, the crowd was in an uproar. The cultivators who were watching nearby also cried out in surprise. "Psst! To think that it's him. Su Zimo? That monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island? I heard that he launched a beast stampede a while ago and massacred an ancient city of Glass Palace in the ancient battlefield. Glass Palace was completely annihilated and only a few cultivators managed to escape."
Ah.
"My name is Su Zimo." He said it casually. There were no domineering or condescending words either. However, everyone was shocked. The name Su Zimo was the greatest aura. At the very least, that name was more terrifying than any super sect in the intermediate ancient battlefield. Corpse Refinement Cult Situ Shi and Chaos Essence Sect's Nye Hao were shocked as well when they heard that name. Their pupils constricted and their expressions turned grim. Lung Ming frowned with a cold gaze. If Su Zimo was considered a minor character, everyone else could only be considered trash. Even Zephyr Thunder Palace's Su Cheng, who was initially looking up into the skies, lowered his head slowly and glared at Su Zimo with narrowed eyes that flickered with lightning. "Su Zimo? Double phenomenon?" Su Cheng's eyes revealed a playful look. Initially, Little Fatty's group of 9 was surrounded by thousands of cultivators and had a weak aura, as though they could be reduced to ashes at any moment. However, after Su Zimo spoke, the aura formed around the 9 of them was comparable to the thousands of cultivators and the 3 major sects around them, without being disadvantaged. In the ancient battlefield, Su Zimo's ferocity was second only to Di. Senior brother, this is the minor character you were talking about? You sure are arrogant. Seeing that the situation had turned around, the little fatty relaxed and said with a grin. Lung Ming's expression darkened, and he ignored little fatty. Instead, he turned to Su Zimo and cupped his fists, saying in a deep voice, "I've long heard of your great name, fellow Daoist Su. Now that I've met you today, you truly live up to your reputation." Su Zimo's expression was indifferent, and he ignored Lung Ming. Killing intent surged in Lung Ming's heart, but he chuckled dryly on the surface and continued, "Fellow Daoist Su, this is a fight between disciples of Tomb sect. As long as you're willing to stand by and watch, I'll definitely repay you." "Oh." Su Zimo raised his brow. "I want the Acheron painting. Will you give it to me?" Ha ha ha. This time, it was Little Fatty and the others turned to laugh out loud. Taking a deep breath of air, Lung Ming suppressed the rage in his heart and forced a smile. "Fellow Daoist, you must be joking. The Yellow Springs diagram is an utmost treasure of Tomb sect, and there's no way I'll give it to you. Apart from the Yellow Springs diagram, you can choose any treasure in this great tomb." "That won't do." Before Su Zimo could say anything, Su Cheng stood out and interrupted coldly, "You've got to give me the Purple Thunder manual in the tombs." Su Zimo was expressionless. A portion of the Thunder Emperor's inheritance is in Zephyr Thunder Palace. Of course, Zephyr Thunder Palace was not created by the Thunder Emperor, but his disciple. The Purple Thunder Manual is a cultivation technique that Zephyr Thunder Palace is missing. Lin Xuanji channeled a voice transmission technique, and his voice sounded in Su Zimo's mind. Su Zimo nodded. Su Cheng looked at Su Zimo and the others and suddenly said, "Whoever has that cultivation technique, I can withdraw from this fight as long as you hand it over." "Brother Su, you..." Lung Ming's expression changed, and he was interrupted by Su Cheng before he could speak. Su Cheng replied indifferently, "I only want the Purple Thunder Manual. I'm not interested in anything else." No matter how shrewd Lung Ming was, his expression turned extremely terrible at that moment. Little Fatty sneered, "So, this is senior brother's connections."
I've seen it for myself.
Impressive, impressive. Is no one going to hand over the Purple Thunder Manual? After waiting for a while and seeing that no one replied, Su Cheng's eyes shone with crackling lightning and killing intent. Su Cheng said coldly, "If no one hands it over, I can only assume that someone is hiding a lost cultivation technique of Zephyr Thunder Palace and should be killed. The Purple Thunder Manual is in my hands. If you want it," Su Zimo said indifferently, "come and get it." These two simple words caused the surrounding cultivators to feel a burst of excitement and their blood to boil. They're going to fight head-on. There's probably going to be a shocking battle between the two paragons. Is the fight for the phenomenon ranking going to be brought forward? Lung Ming was delighted when he saw that. This was truly a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. If someone were to show weakness and hand over the Purple Thunder Manual, the outcome of the current situation would be unknown. But now, Su Cheng could only stand on his side. In front of everyone, knowing that the Purple Thunder Manual was in Su Zimo's hands, Su Cheng did not even have a reason to retreat and could only choose to attack. "Good, good, good." Su Cheng nodded repeatedly and glared at Su Zimo. His eyes surged with battle intent, and his aura rose continuously as he said slowly, "Initially, I wanted to let you off once and fight with you in myriad phenomenon cities. Now that you have a death wish, don't blame me for what happens next." A single disagreement and swords were drawn. A huge battle was about to break out. "Phew!" A mocking voice sounded from outside the crowd. "Since it's so lively, I wanted to join in as well." The moment that voice sounded, the cultivators of Corpse Refinement Cult, Chaos Essence Sect and Zephyr Thunder Palace retreated hurriedly, as though they were avoiding the plague, making way for them. A group of cultivators walked in slowly. All of them wore blue robes, and their leader had his hands behind his back. He had a frivolous expression and licked his scarlet tongue as he walked in. It was one of the 5 heretical doctrines, Poison Sect. Every single cultivator of Poison Sect carried all sorts of lethal poisons with them, and anyone who came into contact with a single one of them could easily lose their lives. The 7 lethals of Poison Sect were even more infamous. No matter how strong one's cultivation was, they would not be able to escape death if they were struck by the 7 lethals of Poison Sect. Although there were only slightly more than 100 Poison Sect cultivators, they were enough to cause the cultivators of Corpse Refinement Cult, Chaos Essence Sect, and Zephyr Thunder Palace to retreat in panic. Su Cheng looked at the young man in the lead and frowned slightly, asking in a deep voice, "Du Ren, whose side are you on?" As though he recalled something, Lin Xuanji whispered to Su Zimo with a gloating expression, "I'm guessing that they're here for revenge." Su Zimo was not surprised at all. 20 years ago, in the elementary ancient battlefield, Xiaoning was poisoned and nearly died. In a fit of rage, he annihilated all of Poison Sect's factions in the ancient battlefield. The cultivator named Du Ren rubbed his chin and asked knowingly, "Fellow Taoist Leng Ming, I heard that you guys are in trouble?" "That's right." Leng Ming could not tell what Du Ren was thinking either. Du Ren smiled. "I can stand on your side. However, I want a share of the treasures in the tomb."
All right.
Leng Ming was delighted and replied hurriedly, "That's for sure. As long as you choose to help me, you'll definitely get a share of the treasures in the tomb." Du Ren turned around slowly and looked at Su Zimo with a venomous gaze as he smirked. "Su Zimo, do you remember a Poison Sect cultivator named Du Kai whom you killed in the ancient battlefield 20 years ago? I'm his elder brother, and I'm here to claim your life today." Du Ren's smile was like a malevolent ghost from hell that sent chills down one's spine. With a calm expression, Su Zimo withdrew Blood Quencher from his storage bag and nodded. "You came at the right time. I'll kill you as well." Chapter 701. In my opinion, Su Zimo's group is most likely doomed. That's right. Even without Poison Sect's help, a few thousand people against 9 people is still overwhelming. Now that Poison Sect is here, they don't stand a chance. "That's not for sure." Another cultivator said, "Glass Palace had tens of thousands of cultivators in that ancient city in the ancient battlefield, but they were still destroyed. This is different. I heard that Su Zimo had the help of the Beast Stampede back then. Furthermore, Su Cheng of Zephyr Thunder Palace alone is enough to restrain Su Zimo. There's nothing to fear about the remaining people." The many cultivators watching from afar began to discuss softly. After Poison Sect joined the fray, Leng Ming knew that victory was already in his hands. Corpse Refinement Cult Situ sure could fight against Puppet Sect Shijian. Chaos Essence Sect's Nye Hao could kill the gray-robed cultivator who claimed to be a small fry with a metal ruler in a casual attack. As for the most troublesome opponent, Su Zimo, Zephyr Thunder Palace's Su Cheng and Poison Sect's Du Ren were more than enough. As for his junior brother, Leng Ming's lips curled. Indeed, Little Fatty's talent in searching for dragon points was higher than his. However, his strength was definitely above Little Fatty's. As for the remaining beasts, a single spit from each of the thousands of perfected Jin Dan around them was enough to drown them. Acheron's painting was already his.
Roar.
Groar. The moment Su Zimo withdrew Blood Quencher, Monkey, Linghu, Qing Qing, and the Golden Lion reverted to their true forms one after another with torrential ferocity and menacing gazes. The surrounding cultivators were shocked and hurriedly summoned their flying swords and other weapons, as though they were facing a great enemy. From the bodies of these demonic beasts, they actually felt an unprecedented pressure. This was a pressure that they had not even felt against pure-blooded, ferocious beasts. The little fox jumped out of Su Zimo's arms, stood on the ground, and transformed. A delicate fragrance filled the air. A young girl in the prime of her youth stood there, slender and elegant. Her appearance was peerless, and when her beautiful eyes looked around, they rippled with light, as if they could steal away one's soul. Some cultivators had just taken out their weapons when their weapons fell to the ground. Among the thousands of cultivators nearby, most of them were lost in their thoughts. Only Su Cheng, Nia Hao, and a few dozen others were able to maintain their calm. Although the little fox was the weakest among the 7 Su Zimo siblings, in reality, her methods were even more frightening. Insolent Demoness! How dare you be so impudent in front of me? Su Cheng shouted loudly. His voice was like thunder, sonorous and powerful, exploding in the ears of many cultivators, instantly causing them to come back to their senses. This was Zephyr Thunder Palace's sound assassination technique, Green Thunderquake. Previously, Su Zimo saw an incomplete sound assassination technique in the Void Thunder manual and fused it with himself to create a sound assassination technique called Thunderclap Kill. That complete sound assassination technique was the Green Thunderquake that Su Cheng released right now. Monkey and the others had strong physiques and frightening bloodlines. Their tolerance towards Green Thunderquake was stronger, and they merely frowned slightly. However, the little fox's figure swayed and her face turned pale. Noisy! Su Zimo sneered, and the blood quencher in his hands vibrated gently, letting out sounds of metal clashing. Spirit light shone brightly, and a blood beam expanded. A shuddering blood stench emanated from the saber.
Boom.
Su Zimo leaped, and the ground beneath his feet rumbled. He had already shot forward with blood quencher and charged towards Su Cheng. Good timing. Su Cheng was fearless as he swiped his storage bag, and a saber appeared in his palm as well. The saber was 9 feet and 5 inches long and was comparable to a spear. A layer of green lightning shrouded the saber and crackled with a terrifying aura. I heard that your blood quencher is a Khanate spirit weapon, Su Cheng said coldly. Today, let my green thunder saber test the sharpness of your blood quencher. Before he finished his sentence, the green thunder saber shone brightly and shone with 6 spirit lights. A Khanate spirit weapon. Within the Great Zhou dynasty, Khanate spirit weapons were nowhere to be seen. However, legacy disciples of super sects would always have Khanate spirit weapons with them. Suddenly, Du Ren's voice sounded erratically. Su Cheng, this man's physique is incomparably strong and he's almost invincible in melee combat. You have to be careful. Du Ren's figure was agile and he followed behind Su Zimo like a maggot. He did not attack right away and was waiting patiently for an opportunity instead. A person, as such, was even more frightening. He was like a hidden venomous snake that could claim one's life with a single bite. On the other side, Situ Shi's expression was cold as he glared at Shi Jian, who was not far away. Waving his hand gently, the 30-feet-tall giant behind him charged out. Roar! The giant reared its head and roared into the skies. The fur coat on its body burst apart and shattered into pieces, revealing a steel-like body that emitted a pungent stench. The body of the battle corpse was bronze in color. However, there were layers of fine white fur growing on the surface of its skin. When he saw that, Shi Jian's pupils constricted and his expression turned extremely grim. That battle corpse was already evolving from a bronze corpse to a silver corpse. Silver corpses were terrifying existences that could kill Jining Jinjuan. Shi Jian slapped his storage bag and summoned the 5 puppets that he had refined. Condensing qi into threads, he controlled the puppets and surrounded Situ Shi's battle corpse in the middle. Compared to Situ Shi's battle corpse, Shi Jian's 5 puppets were way too small. However, the 5 puppets were imbued with the art of the 5 elements. As they moved, they formed a gigantic formation that countered and reinforced each other, restricting the battle corpse to the spot. The 2 successors of Corpse Refinement Cult and Puppet Sect met in advance in the ancient battlefield and fought each other without a clear victor. The battle had already broken out completely. In a flash, Lin Xuanji slipped into the distance like a wisp of smoke, ready to take advantage of the chaos to escape. Unexpectedly, a silver-white beam of light descended. It was extremely sharp and exuded a chilling aura, almost slicing the voids into 2. Lin Xuanji stopped in his tracks hurriedly.
Boom.
Instantly, a long ravine appeared on the ground when the silver-white beam of light landed. Just now, if Lin Xuanji had taken another step, he would have been smashed into smithereens by that white beam of light. Screech! Lin Xuanji stomped his feet in anger and turned around. Not far away, Chaos Essence Sex Nia Hao had a mocking expression and was wielding a horsetail whisk. The silver-white strands of the whisk had just been retracted and were still swaying. "You're thinking of escaping right under my nose?" Nia Hao sneered. Lin Xuanji cursed internally, but forced a smile on his face. "Fellow Taoist, I'm just a small fry, and I'm not on the same side as them. Why do you have to be so ruthless?" Enigma Palace was in charge of the Jin Dan phenomenon ranking in the ancient battlefield. Furthermore, he was the successor of Enigma Palace, and it was not appropriate for him to get on the bad side of the other paragons. That was also the reason why he wore a mask to hide his identity. "That's what I want to do."
What can you do about it? Haha.
Nia Hao burst into laughter smugly with a mocking look in his eyes. Lin Xuanji frowned. The reason why he tolerated it was not because he was afraid of Nia Hao, but because he was afraid that he would be reprimanded by his sect elders if he were to get into trouble. "Hey, let me tell you something," Lin Xuanji said seriously with a dark expression. "You'd better not provoke me." Chapter 702.
What?
Nia Hao could not believe his ears. He looked at Lin Xuanji as though he was looking at a dead man and asked word by word, "Yes, I'm provoking you. What are you going to do about it?" "If you provoke me, I'll beat you up." Lin Xuanji leaped up and charged towards Nia Hao. "You must have a death wish." Nia Hao was enraged, and the horsetail whisk in his hand shone with a bedazzling brilliance. 6 spirit patterns, a connate spirit weapon. Although he was suppressed by Di Yin's halo, Nia Hao still had a connate spirit weapon in his hands. It was clear that Nia Hao's status among perfected being Jin Dan of Chaos Essence sect was not low and was second only to Di Yin.
Swash.
Nia Hao waved the horsetail whisk in his hands, and 3,000 strands of silver-white whisk turned into a blinding white light that resembled a silver-white sword that sliced towards Lin Xuanji's waist. The light was blinding and extremely fast. It arrived almost instantly. Lin Xuanji's expression was unchanged, as though he had expected it. As though he could predict the future, he lowered his body and dodged Nia Hao's killing move by a hair's breadth.
Sure.
Lin Xuanji swung his hand in reverse, and 3 supreme-grade flying swords tore through the air. The 3 flying swords split into 3 different directions and were extremely agile as they pierced towards Nia Hao's vitals. That was a rather profound sword-wielding technique. At the same time, Lin Xuanji conjured a series of spirit arts that were complex and unpredictable. Heavenly Tyrant Hand, Hatred Finger, Frost Palm, Cloud Brushing Hand, Void Cicada Explosion Technique, Triple Green Phantom Saber, Ice Condensation Art. After a series of dazzling spirit arts, Lin Xuanji conjured 18 spirit arts in a single breath that surged towards Nia Hao like a tsunami.
Stunning.
That was the only word that flashed through everyone's minds when they saw that. This, so strong. What's the background of that person? There are spirit arts from all sorts of sects among those 18 spirit arts. I can't recognize his background at all. A commotion broke out in the crowd. In order to conceal his identity, Lin Xuanji naturally would not release the secret skills of Enigma Palace. However, he was well-versed in everything and knew a little bit of everything. Any casual attack of his was suffocating. Not to mention Nia Hao, even Su Zimo could not gauge Lin Xuanji's strength. "I'll go." Nia Hao jumped in fright and cursed in his heart. This kid is hiding his strength. How is this a minor character? Nia Hao waved the horsetail whisk in his hand, and the 3,000 strands of horsetail whisk split into 3 to meet the incoming flying swords. In the next moment, Nia Hao crazily revolved Jin Dan, erupting with his sect's secret technique, Primordial Chaos Palm. Nia Hao was flustered, constantly releasing primeval chaos palms. A series of corporeal palm prints appeared in the void and collided against the 18 incoming spirit arts.
Boom, boom, boom.
A series of violent collisions rang out, deafening everyone's ears. Niahao hovered in midair, his face pale as a sheet of paper. Just now, he had used up almost half of the spiritual power in his dantian. What a lunatic! Niahao cursed and slapped his storage bag, retrieving a few elixirs that he wanted to consume to replenish his spirit energy. Let go. All of a sudden, a voice sounded in Niahao's ears, almost scaring him out of his wits. Unknowingly, Lin Xuanji had already arrived beside him. Extending the iron ruler in his hands, he tapped Niahao's wrist that was holding the elixirs gently.
Ah!
Niahao shrieked, and his wrist swelled instantly. His palm trembled, and the elixirs in his palm fell. How dare you hit me? Niahao's eyes were bloodshot as he grit his teeth, wishing he could rip Lin Xuanji apart alive. In reality, Lin Xuanji had already held back. If he had truly used his full strength, Niahao's hand would have been crippled. In other words, the iron ruler didn't land on Niahao's wrist, but on his head. Anyone would be able to understand if they calmed down and thought about it. However, Niahao could not care less. The only thing on his mind was to kill Lin Xuanji and regain his dignity. I told you not to provoke me, but you didn't listen. Lin Xuanji pouted and pouted. Are you stubborn? You took me seriously when I said that I'm a nobody? What an idiot. Have you been beaten silly by Dean all the time?
Kill.
Niahao was fuming with rage, and his body trembled. The horsetail whisk in his hands trembled, and 3,000 strands tore through the air. Suddenly, they scattered in midair like a waterfall, forming a prison that enveloped Lin Xuanji. Fufu. A mocking look flashed through Lin Xuanji's eyes as his figure flashed, and he was already far away. Lin Xuanji raised his voice. Hey, don't blame me for not reminding you. If you provoke me, I'll still beat you up. Ha 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 ha. A series of laughter sounded from the crowd far away. Niahao's face turned green and white as he nearly exploded from anger. Unable to hold it in any longer, he cursed, I'll beat your mother up. As he said that, Niahao charged forward once more. On the other side, Lung Ming and Little Fatty, the pair of legacy disciples of Tomb Sect, finally met as well. This was an inevitable battle between the two of them. The victor would be the true successor of Tomb Sect for this generation. Junior brother, admit defeat. Lung Ming shook his head. You've been in the sect for 20 years, and we've fought 20 times. When have you ever defeated me? It's enough for me to defeat you this once. Little Fatty said darkly. Lung Ming's gaze turned cold as he said coldly, Junior brother, I might spare your life if you hand over the Acheron painting now. If you insist on being stubborn, don't blame me for being ruthless. You're the one who's stubborn, not me. Little Fatty summoned his flying sword from his storage bag. There's no need to say anything else. Let's fight. All right. Lung Ming hollered and summoned his flying sword as well, engaging Little Fatty in battle. Before the remaining thousands of cultivators could attack, Monkey, Linghu, the Golden Lion, and Qing Qing had already charged into the crowd, causing a bloodbath. The other party had the advantage in numbers. If they were to attack first, Monkey and the others would be injured if each of them summoned a flying sword and stabbed brainlessly. Now, they had split into 4 groups and slaughtered their way into the crowd. They slaughtered their way through the crowd until they were in disarray. The cultivators could only fight individually. Little Fox stood on the spot motionlessly and released a bewitching technique of the fox race. Opening her mouth gently, she breathed out a fragrance, and before long, dozens of cultivators lost their minds and began fighting with their fellow sect mates. Clang! An ear-piercing sound of metal clashing could be heard. The nearby cultivators felt a piercing pain in their ears as they revealed pained expressions. It was Su Zimo and Su Qing clashing head-on. Blood Quencher and Green Thunder Saber clashed. Sizzle! The two completely different powers of blood and thunder intertwined and devoured one another in midair. The stalemate lasted for a single breath. Su Cheng shuddered, and his expression changed starkly as he fell backwards. Zephyr Thunder Palace specialized in thunder techniques, and there were many body tempering techniques in the Void Thunder Manual that was passed down. Although they could not compare to top body tempering sects such as Glass Palace and Overlord Palace, their melee combat strength was not to be underestimated as well. However, Su Cheng had not expected that he would not even be able to withstand a single slash from Su Zimo. Even if Su Zimo did not use his full strength, Su Cheng would not have been able to defend against it. The power of thunder on the green thunder saber surged into Su Zimo's body like a clay ox entering the sea and did not cause any ripples at all. However, when the power of bloodline and blood quencher surged into Su Cheng's body, his blood chi was thrown into chaos, and he nearly died from a reverse flow. Chapter 703. Su Cheng retreated with a grim expression, and his gaze flickered. His arms were already numb from that single exchange, and his blood chi was unstable, unable to calm down. However, Su Zimo charged forward once more with blood quencher, as though nothing had happened. I can't fight him head-on in melee combat anymore. Instantly, Su Cheng made a prompt decision. Wielding the green thunder saber in one hand, he conjured a series of finger techniques with his other hand before finally conjuring a spirit art that burst forth. Zephyr Thunderbreak. Su Cheng hollered. The wind howled and swept towards Su Zimo, causing sand and pebbles to fly before it even got close. There were even crackling green thunderbolts in the wind in an extremely frightening manner. Su Cheng's voice was accompanied by the sound-killing secret skill of Zephyr Thunder Palace as well. The voice turned corporeal and formed waves that swept towards Su Zimo, causing the entire void to tremble and quake. The combination of spirit arts and the sound-killing secret skill descended at the same time. Su Zimo's expression was unchanged as he put away blood quencher. Clasping his hands together, his fingers intertwined into fists and only his index finger was extended, touching the tips of his fingers. After conjuring that dermic seal, Su Zimo's aura changed instantly. It was as though he was shrouded in a layer of holy light. Lowering his gaze, Su Zimo ignored the wild winds and thunderbolts around him. In fact, he did not even look at Su Cheng. With a dignified expression, he opened his mouth slightly and spat out a single word, Pa. The Sanskrit descended, and the world went silent. There were a total of 6 daming dermic seals. That was the only defensive dermic seal among them, the immovable foundation seal. Daming mantra. The daming dermic seals were released at the same time. That was a secret skill of the Daming True Sutra that was not passed down. However, with the destruction of Daming Monastery, the Daming True Sutra was lost, and those secret skills were buried in the dust as well. Who would have thought that this secret skill would actually reappear in the ancient battlefield? Lin Xuanji was initially glaring at Nye Hao when he heard the Sanskrit and could not help but turn towards the source of the sound. This is... As though he recalled something, Lin Xuanji's expression changed as he exclaimed, Daming Monastery's immovable foundation seal. Nye Hao was covered in bruises from Lin Xuanji's beating. Flustered, he could finally catch his breath when he saw Lin Xuanji stop. However, when he heard the words Daming Temple, motionless fundamental seal, his eyes were filled with disbelief. 10,000 years ago, the Daming Temple was destroyed. Although these true disciples from the super sects had never seen the real Daming seal, they had definitely heard of the Daming Temple's reputation. Over the years, countless cultivators had braved the dangers to head to the Great Qian ruins in hopes of finding the secret skills of Fahua and Daming monasteries. The sound of Sanskrit resounded throughout the world. Almost instantly, Su Cheng's sound assassination technique was dispersed. The howling gales and flashing lightning around Su Zimo were also blocked by the sacred Buddhist light emitted by the motionless fundamental seal, vanishing into nothingness. A cold light flashed in Su Cheng's eyes. He did not expect that his attack would be so easily neutralized by Su Zimo. All of a sudden, Du Ren's figure appeared behind Su Zimo and he tossed out a ball of blue poison needles that were as thin as a cow's hair and arrived instantly. Durin flicked his sleeves and scattered another ball of purplish-green powder.
Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh.
Right after, Duren's fingertips pinched 5-foot-long steel nails as he channeled a unique force and shot them towards Su Zimo. Su Zimo's motionless fundamental seal had already dissipated after colliding with Su Cheng's Zephyr Thunderbreak. That was when his defense was at its weakest. After waiting for a long time, Duren finally found a golden opportunity. The moment he attacked, he released the most terrifying killing move of Poison Sect. Poison Sect was known for its use of poison. The 7 most terrifying killing moves of Poison Sect were known as the 7 lethals of Poison Sect. Just now, the blue poison needles were one of the 7 lethals, the heart-seeking spike. They were as thin as a cow's hair and were difficult to distinguish with the naked eye. As long as they stuck to the body, they would enter the body through the pores and enter the bloodline. At that time, even the gods would not be able to save them. As for the purplish-green powder, it was one of the 7 lethals, the purple corpse corrosion poison. Back then, Xiaoning was poisoned by this poison. Thankfully, she had the blood of the night spirit and that mysterious elixir furnace, or she would have turned into a pool of blood long ago. The final 5 steel needles were even more frightening. They were one of the 7 lethals, the armor-piercing bone corrosion needles. Those steel needles contained an extremely terrifying corrosive poison that could pierce through armor and dermic robes with ease. It was extremely difficult to defend against them. Any cultivator who was struck by the armor-piercing bone corrosion needles would have their bones turned into dust within 10 breaths. 3 of the 7 lethals enveloped Su Zimo at the same time. You really have a death wish. Su Zimo's gaze was cold as his Jin Dan spun, and spirit energy surged as he channeled the ancient dragonification manual right away. A divine dragon that was more than 10 feet long appeared out of thin air with a towering horn. It coiled a few rounds around his body before ascending and stopping in midair. The divine dragon was covered in scales that shone with a cold glint. The bone spikes on its back and its claws were sharp as it glared at Du Ren, who was not far away, with a menacing gaze. What heart-chasing thorns! What purple corpse-corroding poison! What armor-piercing bone-piercing spikes! All of them were destroyed by the divine dragon. The armor-piercing bone corrosion needles merely produced sparks when they struck the divine dragon's body before falling to the ground. Dragons once ruled over thousands of races and had the noblest and most terrifying bloodline that was immune to all poisons. In the eyes of dragons, the 7 lethals of Poison Sect were merely minor tricks. Accompanied by the birth of the divine dragon, an extremely terrifying and shuddering aura descended.
Ah!
A series of exclamations sounded from the crowd. What's that? Is that a true dragon? Heavens! That person has a true dragon protecting him. Who is he? Could he be the reincarnation of an immortal from the upper world? Even the cultivators watching from afar were shocked and felt waves of pressure, let alone the cultivators on the battlefield. Du Ren, who was targeted by the divine dragon, felt his limbs turn cold and his scalp prickle. A layer of cold sweat had already formed on his back, and it was chilling.
Go.
Su Zimo pointed forward. The divine dragon that coiled around him soared into the air with a divine light and a terrifying aura. Evil winds howled as it lunged towards Du Ren.
Ah!
Du Ren's face was pale, and he was scared out of his wits. Senior brother, watch out. Many Poison Sect cultivators attacked one after another, summoning poison weapons that shot towards the divine dragon in midair. The divine dragon swung its tail. The gigantic dragon tail swept over, and dozens of Poison Sect cultivators exploded instantly, turning them into blood mists as a blood-colored zone appeared in the void. More than half of Poison Sect's cultivators were dead. When he saw that it was too late to escape, Du Ren conjured his Jin Dan phenomenon. I'll send you brothers down for a reunion. Su Zimo hollered. The divine dragon understood and ignored Du Ren's Jin Dan phenomenon as it extended its head and chomped down.
Snap!
Du Ren's Jin Dan phenomenon shattered instantly. In a few bites, the divine dragon crushed Du Ren and swallowed him into its stomach. A streak of blood flowed from the corner of its mouth. Du died on the spot. Poison sex cultivators, even legacy disciples, were not adept at fighting head-on. Du gene Dan phenomenon could not even be ranked on the phenomenon ranking. The ancient dragonification manual was a secret skill of the human emperor and could fight against most phenomenons. Chapter 704. The crowd was shocked. Nobody expected more than half of the 100-odd poison sect cultivators to be killed by the divine dragon summoned by Su Zimo before they could even unleash their true strength. Even Du Ren, the paragon of poison sect, was dead without a corpse. The poison sect cultivators who were lucky enough to survive scattered in all directions, no longer daring to linger on the battlefield. Immortal. That person is definitely the reincarnation of an immortal. How can an ordinary cultivator have the protection of a true dragon? Some of the poison sect cultivators were so frightened that they spoke without thinking. They had already lost their minds. Fear was an emotion that was contagious. Against the pressure of the dragon's aura, most cultivators could not maintain their composure to begin with. Now that they saw the tragic state of the poison sect cultivators, even the cultivators of Zephyr Thunder Palace, Chaos Essence Sect, and Corpse Refinement Cult were flustered. Monkey, Linghu, Qing Qing, and the Golden Lion seized the opportunity to release a wave of powerful attacks. Little Fox made use of the moment when many cultivators were shocked to break through their mental defenses and control more cultivators to kill each other. Although the three super sects had the advantage in numbers, they suffered heavy losses at that moment and were exhausted from dealing with the situation. What are you guys panicking for? Su Cheng's sharp senses told him that something was amiss as he hollered hurriedly and pointed to the divine dragon coiling in midair. Open your eyes wide. That's a fake dragon created by that person using his spirit energy. It was no wonder why Su Cheng was a paragon of Zephyr Thunder Palace. Although he could not recognize the origin of the ancient dragonification manual, he could maintain his composure and deduce that the divine dragon was created by Su Zimo's spirit energy. Su Zimo sneered and said indifferently, "It's impolite not to reciprocate. Have a taste of my musical killing technique as well." Su Cheng's expression changed as he felt his heart skip a beat. Su Zimo took a deep breath and his chest expanded at a speed visible to the naked eye like an air balloon. The strange thing was that the divine dragon coiling in midair was also taking deep breaths and puffing its chest. Its body expanded rapidly and a massive air current surged, forming hurricanes in midair. The man and dragon's actions were almost synchronized. There was a brief pause. The man and dragon opened their mouths at the same time.
Roar.
A roar that could penetrate gold and crack stone, enough to tear apart the clouds erupted. Su Zimo's mouth actually emitted a dragon's roar. In an instant, the sky changed color and sand and pebbles flew everywhere. On the battlefield, all the sounds of fighting, roaring, clashing of spiritual spells, and clashing of weapons seemed to have disappeared in an instant. Between heaven and earth, only the sound of the dragon's roar remained, reverberating endlessly. Some of the cultivators from the three super sects who were closest to Su Zimo could not withstand it. Blood flowed out of their 7 orifices, and their eyes were glazed over. Their brains had already been shattered. One figure after another fell from the sky. Su Cheng, who was directly facing Su Zimo, suffered an even more terrifying impact. The majority of the dragon roar's power had landed on his body. Yes. Su Cheng let out a muffled groan and staggered backwards. Every step he took left a deep footprint in the ground, and there were faint flashes of lightning inside. Su Cheng only managed to stabilize himself after taking more than 10 steps back. By now, his face was extremely pale. His blood chi surged, and his throat bobbed as a trace of blood seeped out from the corner of his lips. The dragon's roar had already penetrated his body and injured his organs. Against the shroud of the dragon's roar, the cultivators of the three super sects suffered quite a bit of impact as well. Monkey and the others fought with increasing ferocity. The situation was slowly tipping in their favor. Su Cheng wiped away the blood from the corner of his lips gently and swallowed a handful of elixirs. Jin Dan circulated slowly, and its eyes flashed with lightning as a terrifying aura gradually rose from its body. Given the current situation, the few of them could only turn the tides if they killed their opponents as soon as possible. If this continued, it would be their doomsday once the few demon beasts extricated themselves. I admit that you're indeed strong, Su Cheng said slowly. However, you can dream on if you want to defeat me. Today, I'll let you experience the Jin Dan phenomenon of Zephyr Thunder Palace so that you can give up. Snap! A bolt of lightning as thick as a water bucket descended from the skies and struck the divine dragon's head instantly. The power of the phenomenon was released. Crack! 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 Cracks appeared on the surface of the divine dragon's body one after another. At the end of the day, the ancient Dragonification manual was only a spirit art and could not defend against the top-tier Jin Dan phenomenon. Su Zimo frowned slightly. Su Cheng's Jin Dan phenomenon might be even more frightening than he had initially imagined. Lin Xuanji had reminded him that Su Cheng had already cultivated the top-tier legacy phenomenon of Zephyr Thunder Palace, apocalyptic 5 thunders. Right now, a single divine thunderbolt released by Su Cheng possessed such might. If all 5 thunderbolts were gathered, it would be rather troublesome. At the same time, on the other side of the battlefield, Chaos Essence Sex Nia Hao was in an even worse state. He was suppressed by Lin Xuanji and could not even retaliate. Lin Xuanji had many methods, and there was nothing he did not know. Up till this point of the battle, Lin Xuanji had not used any of his repeated spirit arts. In fact, he had even released some of Chaos Essence Sex spirit arts. Hey, that's about enough. If you hurry and escape now, you'll still have a chance to live, Lin Xuanji advised kindly. After a while, you won't be able to escape even if you want to. Up till this point, Lin Xuanji could have taken Nia Hao's life more than 10 times. However, he did not kill him. Those words were from the bottom of his heart. However, right in front of everyone, Nia Hao was beaten black and blue. Feeling humiliated, his blood surged, and he could no longer care about anything else as he roared and released his Jin Dan phenomenon. Most perfected Jin Dan beings would not use their Jin Dan phenomenons casually in a fight. Jin Dan phenomenons were the strongest methods of perfected Jin Dan. The moment they were released, it meant that there was no way out for either party. They had to fight to the death. Lin Xuanji frowned and cursed. What a *King lunatic. You don't know what's good for you. If you're not leaving, I'll leave. Lin Xuanji did not want to get entangled with Nia Hao and turned to leave. Where do you think you're going? Nia Hao's features were contorted and he had a menacing expression. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he charged towards Lin Xuanji and hollered, Chaos Essence Cave. One after another, spirit energy that could be seen with the naked eye spun and collided repeatedly before eventually collapsing. A pitch-black hole appeared behind Nia Hao with a sinister wind billowing. Initially, the hole was small. However, under the frenzied circulation of Nia Hao's Jin Dan, the hole expanded continuously like the blood mouth of a tautai that could devour everything. The legacy phenomenon of Chaos Essence Sect, Chaos Essence Cave, was ranked 28th on the Jin Dan phenomenon ranking. For Chaos Essence beings, their Essence Chi was not divided and Chaos was 1. That was the beginning of Essence Chi. Some of the cultivators were careless, and their weapons were sucked into Chaos Essence Cave. Crack. 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 Instantly, a supreme-grade spirit weapon was devoured by Chaos Essence Cave and turned into dust. The black hole released a powerful suction force that engulfed Lin Xuanji. Lin Xuanji tolerated it repeatedly, but Nia Hao was relentless. Lin Xuanji's expression darkened instantly, and his eyes shone coldly. He was truly enraged. Chapter 705. Hurry, look. He's using the Jin Dan phenomenon. Chaos Essence Hole, the ancient phenomenon ranked 28th on the previous phenomenon ranking. Its might is frightening. Although that gray-robed cultivator knows a lot of things, no matter how many spirit arts he uses, they can only be devoured and turned into nothingness under the cover of Chaos Essence Hole. The cultivators watching from afar discussed excitedly. It was an eye-opener for them to be able to witness the clash of ancient phenomenons here. You're really pushing your luck. Lin Xuanji no longer retreated and glared at Nia Hao, who was charging over, with a cold gaze. The Jin dance circulated slowly, and an extremely terrifying aura rose from his body. Suddenly, a hazy gray fog appeared around Lin Xuanji. There was an ancient aura within the fog, as though they had returned to the beginning of the universe, the epoch before chaos was formed. This gray fog tumbled about, seeming to contain the most mysterious strength in the universe. Even the primordious hole wasn't able to swallow it. Nia Hao's eyes widened as he looked at the fog in disbelief. Heavens, that gray-robed cultivator managed to cultivate the Jin Dan phenomenon as well. What sort of phenomenon is that can go against Chaos Essence Hole? That seems to be. Nia Hao seemed to have thought of something when he heard the discussions around him. His eyes flashed and his expression changed starkly as he exclaimed, "Ancient phenomenon, great expanding fog." The crowd was in an uproar when they heard those words. Even Su Cheng, who was facing off against Su Zimo not far away, frowned and glanced over. The great expanding fog was created by the ancient expert, Fairy Ling Long, and could only be cultivated by the successor of Enigma Palace. Initially, everyone thought that the gray-robed cultivator was an itinerant cultivator with a mysterious background. But now, the identity of the gray-robed cultivator was clear. Fellow Taoist from Enigma Palace? Lung Ming had a vague feeling that something was amiss. The situation was completely out of control. When he saw the great expanding fog, Nia Hao gradually calmed down with regret. Originally, the other party had no intention of interfering. Instead, it was he who had repeatedly forced the other party into a life-and-death battle with the other party. Only then had he reached the point where he could not back down. Lung Ming rolled his eyes and raised his voice. Since when did Enigma Palace interfere with the internal fights between disciples of Tomb Sect? When Lin Xianji released the great expanding fog, he did not intend to continue hiding his identity. I have no intention of interfering. Lin Xuanji took off his mask and put away his iron ruler. He took out a paper fan that he always carried with him and sneered, "However, someone just won't let me." Lung Ming and the others glanced at Nia Hao, cursing him in their hearts. "I didn't think this through. I didn't know your identity and acted rashly." Nia Hao took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "Fellow Taoist, you may leave. I won't stop you." He. Lin Xuanji laughed coldly and shook his head. "It's too late to show weakness now." Lin Xuanji pointed at Nia Hao with a stern expression and said word by word, "I've warned you many times not to provoke me. Now you've pissed me off."
Boom.
Lin Xuanji strode forward, and the great expanding fog surged, forming a gigantic chessboard in front of him that seemed as though it could envelop the entire world. Nia Hao's expression was dark. No matter what, he was a paragon of Chaos Essence Sect and had the pride of a paragon. All right, let's see what Enigma Palace's great expanding fog is capable of. Nia Hao hollered and controlled the Chaos Essence Hole to devour the chessboard that Lin Xuanji created. Since the ancient era, although Fairy Ling Long created the Jin Dan phenomenon ranking, none of the successors of Enigma Palace took part in the fights for the ranking. Many cultivators only knew about the great expanding fog, that it was an ancient phenomenon with an incredible background and might. However, no one could say for sure how powerful it was or where it ranked on the phenomenon ranking. The reason why Nia Hao dared to attack despite knowing Lin Xuanji's identity was because he was confident that his Chaos Essence Hole could devour the great expanding fog. Humph! A look of mockery flashed through Lin Xuanji's eyes. He did not retreat or avoid, and sent the chessboard created by the great expanding fog into the Chaos Essence Hole. The darkness of the hole tried to drown the chessboard repeatedly. However, the chessboard spun slowly and released a mysterious power that tore the Chaos Essence Hole apart. Niahao's mind was connected to it, and his expression changed when he sensed the changes in the chaos essence hole. Break. Lin Xuanji pointed forward, and a spirit light entered the chaos essence hole. The chessboard expanded rapidly.
Crack. Crack.
Under countless gazes, cracks began to appear on the surface of the primordious cave.
Ah.
There's an outcome to the fight between the two ancient phenomenons. To think that the great expanding fog would be this frightening. Before the discussion could end, a loud explosion erupted in the void, shaking the heavens and the earth.
Boom.
The chaos essence hole exploded. Niahao's body shuddered, and he spat out a mouthful of blood, looking dispirited. After destroying the chaos essence hole, the chessboard created by the great expanding fog merely dimmed significantly. However, it did not dissipate and spun slowly above Niahao's head. As long as Lin Xuanji willed it, Niahao would die on the spot.
Kill.
Right then, the battle on the other side had reached its peak as well. Situ Shi controlled the 30-feet-tall battle corpse and charged at the formation formed by the 5 puppets repeatedly. The battle corpse was extremely strong, and every single punch and kick contained terrifying power. Shi Jian's 5 elements puppet could not hold on any longer. Even so, there was no hint of panic in Shi Jian's eyes. He pursed his lips tightly, and spirit chi threads coiled around his fingers as he controlled the 5 elements puppet. Among them, there were puppets that burned with flames and puppets that were like water. They constantly attacked the battle corpse, sending streams of completely different energy into the battle corpse's body. At this point of cultivation, the battle corpse was almost invulnerable to fire and water. Pure fire or water could hardly harm the battle corpses. However, fire and water were incompatible. When the 2 powers were used on the battle corpse at the same time, a violent conflict would occur. Fire and water were incompatible, and the 2 powers would use the battle corpse's body as a battlefield. In the beginning, this kind of conflict did not affect the incomparably strong and indestructible battle corpse at all. However, as time passed and the power of fire and water was injected continuously, the conflict overlapped, and finally, a qualitative change occurred. The battle corpse's movements turned increasingly slow. Its flesh began to show signs of softening and falling off. Even its bones that were comparable to spirit weapons turned extremely fragile against the power of fire and water. By the time Situ Shi realized everything, it was already too late. Go. Shi Jian pointed his finger forward, and the earth, wood, and metal puppets moved in 3 different directions. They charged towards Situ Shi, who was not far away. The 30-feet-tall battle corpse was already restrained on the spot by the fire and water puppets and could not approach Shi Jian at all. One controlled the battle corpse, while the other controlled the puppets. If the 2 of them continued fighting, it would be difficult to determine a victor even if the battle corpse and puppets fought for 3 days and 3 nights. But now, that balance was finally broken. Situ Shi could not even protect himself. Chapter 706. Ah! Situ Shi exclaimed with a look of panic in his eyes. Be it cultivators of puppet sect or corpse refinement cult, most of their efforts were spent on refining puppets or battle corpses. For example, cultivators of poison sect and tomb sect had similar tendencies and would spend most of their efforts on external items. That was also the reason why they were known as heretical doctrines. There was a limit to one's strength. The cultivators of the 5 heretical doctrines naturally could not compare to the cultivators of the other super sects in terms of cultivation comprehension. Their personal strength was weaker. There were even fewer cultivators who could cultivate Jin-Dan phenomenons. For example, Durin of Poison Sect was a rare paragon of Poison Sect. However, it was a pity that he was killed by the ancient dragonification art the moment he released his Jin-Dan phenomenon. Situ Shi's capabilities were all based on his 30-feet-tall battle corpse. Now that the battle corpse was restrained by Shi Jian and 3 puppets were charging over, Situ Shi felt that something was amiss. Go. Slapping his storage bag, Situshur summoned a flying sword and stabbed towards the metal puppet on his left.
Clang.
The flying sword struck the metal puppet's body and was deflected away, creating a trail of sparks. The metal puppet's body was the toughest and most indestructible. Even Situshur's battle corpse could not destroy it. How could it be injured by Situshur's flying sword? In his panic, Situshur released another spirit art. The earth puppet gathered sand in front of it to form a shield, easily blocking the spirit spell. When he saw that he was no match for it, Situshur turned to flee. Unexpectedly, green grass rose from beneath his feet and coiled around his legs instantly. Unknowingly, the wood puppet had already arrived before him. The leaves of the grass were as thin as paper and sharp as blades, slicing open wounds on Situshur's thighs with fresh blood. Ah! Situshur shrieked tragically. The metal puppet had already charged forward and used its palm as a saber, slashing down viciously at Situshur's head. A cold light flashed with a chilling, killing intent. Before the saber descended, Situshur already felt his hairs stand on end. Without hesitation, Situshur waved his staff in reverse.
Clang.
The sound of metal clashing resounded in his ears. Situshur could only feel a sharp pain in his ears, as if he had gone deaf. Although he managed to block the attack, the earth puppet had already closed in on Situshur. Its entire body was pressed against Situshur's body, and it turned into an endless amount of sand that wrapped around him layer by layer. In the blink of an eye, Situshur's figure had disappeared, leaving behind only a human-shaped lump of earth.
Plop.
After a short pause, the human-shaped lump of earth fell to the ground and shattered on the spot, revealing Situshur's figure. The corpse refinement cult prodigy no longer had any signs of life in his body. His eyes were wide open, filled with fear and indignation. In the battle between the top geniuses, the two of them were the first to decide the victor. Who would have thought that Situshur, who had been famous for so many years, would be killed by an unknown brat? Multitasking, controlling the 5 elemental puppets and killing the prodigy of the corpse refinement cult. This brat from the puppet sect is going to be famous after today. The path of refining corpses is, after all, a crooked path. It's not worth mentioning. Most of the cultivators who were watching nearby sighed with emotion. Huff, huff. Shi Jian half knelt on the ground and panted heavily. His clothes were already drenched in sweat, and he was completely exhausted. Although he didn't fight Situshur face-to-face, controlling 5 puppets in a row was still a huge drain on his mind and spiritual power. If they were to fight for another hour, it would be hard to tell who would emerge victorious. Nia Hao was defeated and Situshur died tragically. Lung Ming realized that if he did not take down Little Fatty as soon as possible and snatch away Acheron's diagram, it would be difficult for him to escape unscathed today.
Kill.
Lung Ming was decisive and released his Jin Dan phenomenon with a roar. Junior brother, admit defeat. A murky yellow river appeared behind Lung Ming. It was vast and gave off a heavy, gloomy aura. Corpses floated in it, and ghosts struggled inside.
Splash.
Little Fatty had a fearless expression and released his Jin Dan phenomenon as well. The 2 legacy disciples of Tomb's sect released their Acheron phenomenons at the same time. Fufu, junior brother, so, what if you release your Acheron phenomenon? Lung Ming's eyes were filled with mockery as he shook his head and chuckled. All these years, when has your Acheron phenomenon ever surpassed mine? You're still far from. Before Lung Ming could finish, his expression changed starkly, and he stopped abruptly. A murky yellow river appeared behind Little Fatty as well. It was mighty, and there were corpses and ghosts within it. However, the aura of that phenomenon was much more terrifying than his. How is that possible? Lung Ming looked at everything in disbelief. Before entering the ancient battlefield, Little Fatty's Acheron phenomenon had not been cultivated to this level.
Roar.
A WYRM-like figure appeared vaguely in the murky yellow river, creating torrential waves and letting out a long roar. After obtaining the recognition of the Acheron diagram, not only was Little Fatty's body reborn, even his Acheron phenomenon had changed completely. Furthermore, there was even 50% of the dragon veins sealed within his Acheron diagram. Lung Ming's Acheron was like a weak stream against the Acheron behind Little Fatty. Acheron's rolling 6-Dao burial. That was the true Acheron phenomenon. Amidst the torrential waves, Little Fatty released his Acheron phenomenon and pulled Lung Ming in. Impossible! Within the Acheron, Lung Ming howled hysterically with a menacing expression and struggled with all his might. However, his Acheron phenomenon was so weak against the true Acheron that it could not withstand a single blow.
How could this be? How could this be?
Lung Ming's body was tainted by the power of the Acheron phenomenon. His clothes turned into nothingness, and his skin and flesh started rotting. I've got it. It must be the Acheron diagram. The true Acheron is fused into your phenomenon. What are you trying to do? Do you really dare to kill me? Lung Ming glared at Little Fatty and hollered. Initially, Little Fatty's eyes were filled with hesitation. However, when he heard Lung Ming's words, Little Fatty took a deep breath of air and channeled Jin Dan with all his might. Acheron was torrential and engulfed Lung Ming. Junior, brother, we're from the same sect. Please spare my life. Please spare me. Within the Acheron, Lung Ming did not give up and resisted with all his might. His voice was stuttering and his tone had already weakened. Senior brother, I only know one thing. If we were in each other's shoes, you wouldn't have let me off. Little Fatty's voice was calm. Acherons rumbled and drowned Lung Ming completely. All the cultivators that saw this opened their mouths slightly with shock in their eyes. The true Acheron phenomenon had appeared. Following Miahao's defeat and the deaths of Situ Shi and Lung Ming one after another, the outcome of this battle was clear. However, the spectating cultivators were still fixated on the battlefield in excitement, unwilling to blink for fear of missing out on anything. The other two peerless paragons were fighting. The world changed. Chapter 707. Miahao was defeated miserably, while Situ Shi and Lung Ming died one after another. More than half of the cultivators of the three super sects were killed by Monkey, and the others as well. The defeat of Su Cheng's side was almost a foregone conclusion. However, at that moment, Su Cheng had no intention of retreating. His eyes were filled with fighting spirit as he glared at Su Zimo, with lightning flashing within the Jin Dan phenomenon behind him. Everyone else could retreat, but he couldn't. The Purple Thunder Manual was in Su Zimo's hands. As long as he could snatch that cultivation technique back, he would be able to contribute greatly to the sect and obtain a chance to cultivate the Purple Thunder Manual. Naturally, his combat strength would increase exponentially. The cultivation technique passed down in Zephyr Thunder Palace was the Green Thunder Manual and was also a heaven-grade cultivation technique. There were clear records in the sect that the Purple Thunder and Green Thunder cultivation techniques were only inferior, heaven-grade cultivation techniques individually. If the two were combined, it would be a superior, heaven-grade cultivation technique with unimaginable might. Su Cheng believed that this was his opportunity. As long as he could kill Su Zimo and retrieve the Purple Thunder Manual, he would become the #1 perfected lord after advancing to the nascent soul realm. In fact, he would be able to sweep through all void reversions upon advancing to the void reversion realm and become the new titular disciple of the sect. Su Cheng could not retreat. He was the top disciple of Zephyr Thunder Palace in the ancient battlefield and had his own pride. Even if he were to retreat in scathe today, the two of them would definitely fight for the Jin Dan phenomenon ranking in Myriad Phenomenon City in the future. At that time, his aura would weaken before they even fought. Su Cheng believed that he could turn the tides and kill Su Zimo to retrieve the Purple Thunder Manual. In fact, he could even attempt to snatch the Acheron painting. All right. Sweeping his gaze across the battlefield, Su Cheng nodded with a torrential aura and shouted, "Without Situ Shi and the others, I'll be able to claim all the treasures in the tomb alone. I have to thank you guys for your help." You might not have understood the situation. Su Zimo merely stood with his hands behind his back, casually standing in midair. Yet, he was able to face off against Su Cheng, who had already condensed his Jin Dan avatar. In terms of momentum, he was not at a disadvantage. Su Zimo said indifferently, "You can't even protect yourself right now, yet you still want the treasures in the tomb? Ha ha ha." Su Cheng threw his head back and laughed loudly. "Su Zimo, I admit that you're very strong in close combat, but Daoist Jin Dan's strongest move is his Jin Dan phenomenon. The ranking that Fairy Ling Long created back then was called the Jin Dan phenomenon ranking, not the melee physical body ranking. I heard that you have a twin phenomenon. Today, I'd like to see for myself what you can do with your twin phenomenon." "As you wish." Su Zimo's voice was calm, but behind him, lightning flashed and thunder roared. The sky collapsed, countless meteorites fell, and a flood overflowed. A gigantic divine turtle appeared between heaven and earth. Its gaze was clear as it let out a long cry towards the sky, its divine might awe-inspiring. The primordial divine turtle. A series of mysterious patterns shone on its shell and supported the shattered heavens. Its four legs were like heavenly pillars that suppressed the flood.
Go.
Su Cheng felt immense pressure and pointed forward. Initially, there was only a single thunderbolt pillar behind him. However, in the blink of an eye, two more appeared. They were as thick as buckets and shone resplendently as they descended. Snap!
Snap!
3 bolts of lightning descended, all of them smashing onto the back of the armor. Sizzle! Lightning shone brightly, and a series of terrifying electric arcs burst forth from the shell. The primordial divine turtle withstood the 3 thunderbolts head-on and stood firm, protecting Su Zimo beneath it. Ah, it's indeed a lost primordial phenomenon. It's so strong. Seems like Su Cheng can't do anything to Su Zimo at all. Not necessarily. The Jin Dan phenomenon that Su Cheng cultivated is the apocalyptic 5 thunders. Right now, he has only released 3 divine thunderbolts. You have to know that the power of each additional divine thunderbolt increases exponentially. Su Cheng narrowed his eyes. He did not expect that 3 divine thunderbolts would be enough to defeat Su Zimo. However, he did not expect that the condensation of 3 divine thunderbolts would not have much of an impact on Su Zimo's primordial divine turtle. "This is only the beginning," Su Cheng said coldly and swallowed a handful of elixirs. The Jin Dan circulated once more, and the dark clouds above his head turned even thicker. They were pitch black and looked as though they were about to drip down. Sizzle! As the dark clouds collided, lightning flashed and another divine thunderbolt was formed, crashing down. 4 divine thunderbolts descended at the same time.
Boom!
The 4 divine thunderbolts were like 4 long spears that shone with lightning. They pierced the divine turtle's shell heavily and let out a deafening bang.
Roar!
The divine turtle cried out tragically with a hint of pain in its eyes. Under the bombardment of the 4 divine thunderbolts, the Jin Dan phenomenon behind Su Zimo shook violently and dimmed. Humph! Su Zimo's gaze was cold. With a single thought, the Jin Dan circulated, and an incomparably domineering and explosive aura surged from his body, bursting forth instantly. Rumble!
Boom!
The mountains collapsed and volcanoes spewed. One after another, scorching lava splattered on the vast land, incinerating and refining all living beings. Pissed! The primordial soaring serpent flapped its wings and hissed endlessly. It soared into the skies from the cracks on the ground and took a deep breath of air before spewing out once more after gulping down the lava.
Shing!
The scorching scarlet lava splashed onto Su Cheng's Jin Dan phenomenon and let out a strange sound. Even the divine thunderbolts were ignited and flames surged into the skies. The divine turtle and soaring serpent, 2 primordial divine beings, descended at the same time. With the simultaneous arrival of water and fire, the twin phenomenons caused the world to quake. Su Cheng's expression changed starkly. The might of the twin phenomenons was far more frightening than he had imagined. Back then, the soaring serpent and divine turtle phenomenons were ranked in the top 10 of the Jin Dan phenomenon ranking. What sort of frightening level would the power of the 2 phenomenons be when they were condensed at the same time? The 4 divine thunderbolts could not withstand it at all. The lightning dimmed, and the Jean Dan phenomenon swayed on the brink of collapse, ready to shatter at any moment. Well, well, well. Su Chung grit his teeth and said coldly, "You should be proud that you managed to force me to this extent. The apocalyptic five thunders that I cultivated was initially prepared for Dean. Now, I can only suppress you first." Fifth Divine Thunderbolt. Condense. Su Cheng's Jean Dan was already channeled to its limits, and there was even a piercing pain. Bolts of lightning flashed around him one after another. As though he was possessed by the god of thunder, he pointed into the skies, and a speck of light appeared in the depths of the inky clouds, growing brighter and brighter. An even more frightening divine thunderbolt descended. The fifth divine thunderbolt was condensed, and Su Cheng's Jean Dan phenomenon was truly formed and underwent a qualitative change. The five thunderbolts possessed the might to destroy the world.
Bang, 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 bang.
The five divine thunderbolts descended and struck the divine turtle and soaring serpent phenomenons repeatedly. There was naturally no way the two primordial divine beings would back down in the face of such provocation. They howled and created raging tides as they collided with the five divine thunderbolts with a blazing flame that blanketed the skies. A series of colorful halos burst forth from the point of collision of the three Jean Dan phenomenons. The spirit chi in the surroundings had already dried up and was completely absorbed by the three phenomenons. Air currents rumbled. The cultivators around the two of them could not dodge in time and were engulfed by the aftershock of the collision of the three phenomenons. Instantly, they turned into blood mists without any corpses left. Everyone witnessed with their own eyes that a perfect-grade spirit weapon was sandwiched by the three phenomenons and cracks appeared on it. Psst! The crowd was in an uproar. What a terrifying burst that even a perfect-grade spirit weapon could not withstand. Chapter 708. The three Jean Dan phenomenons collided repeatedly in midair, releasing a series of terrifying shockwaves. The cultivators nearby had already retreated far away. The voids were trembling violently. Su Chung had a deranged expression and green veins popped up on his neck. The power of his phenomenon was already pushed to its limits. Even so, the five divine thunderbolts could not break through the two primordial phenomenons of the soaring serpent and divine turtle. The Jean Dan phenomenons of both parties faced each other in midair and were expended continuously. Compared to Su Chung, Su Zimo was much calmer. Although he had the upper hand with his double phenomenon, he could not destroy the five divine thunderbolts. As Lin Xuanji had said, apart from Di'in, Su Chung was the most troublesome paragon Su Zimo had encountered. Apocalyptic Five Thunders was also the only Jean Dan phenomenon that could defend against the soaring serpent and divine turtle twins. In midair, the three phenomenons were still corroding and colliding with one another without a clear victor. Su Cheng's gaze flickered. In just a short while, the successor of Enigma Palace, the successor of Puppet Sect, and the successor of Tomb Sect had all consumed some elixirs and were able to catch their breaths and recover some of their combat strength. If the three of them were to charge forward again, he would definitely lose. Su Zimo, we'll consider it a draw today. Su Chung had an indignant expression, but he could only swallow his anger and grit his teeth. We'll fight to the death once we reach Myriad Phenomenon City. Don't worry, I'll definitely make you hand over the Purple Thunder Manual. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Chung was about to withdraw. Unexpectedly, Su Zimo pressed on with a mocking look in his eyes as he said indifferently, "Why wait until Myriad Phenomenon City? Let's fight to the death today." Humph. Su Chung sneered. "Su Zimo, I admit that you have some tricks up your sleeve. However, you're way too naive if you think that you can kill me with your double phenomenon." "You're the naive one, not me," Su Zimo sneered as well and asked instead, "Do you really think that my trump card is only the double phenomenon?" When he heard that, Su Cheng's expression changed, and his heart skipped a beat. Could it be that this person had an even more powerful trump card? This was impossible. Su Cheng immediately denied this thought. But in the next moment, Su Chung was dumbfounded, and his eyes were filled with endless shock. Fuse! Su Zimo stood in the air, and with a soft shout, his hands gradually came together. Along with his voice and action, the two primordial phenomenons behind him actually moved towards the center slowly and fused together. After all, the primordial divine turtle and the primordial soaring serpent were polar opposites. One was water, and the other was fire. One was still, and the other was moving. Now, the soaring snake was coiled around the black tortoise. Its huge body was coiled around the black tortoise's shell, with its two heads one above the other. The two primordial gods seemed to have fused into one and were inseparable. This wasn't just the fusion of two primordial gods. It also contained some kind of truth of heaven and earth and the profound mysteries of the universe. The tortoise and the snake coiled together, water and fire fused, movement and stillness combined. Suddenly, an even more terrifying aura was released, spreading in all directions and enveloping the world. Be it the cultivators on the battlefield or watching from afar, all of them felt their hearts skip a beat. They kept silent out of fear and could not help but want to kneel on the ground. Even Monkey, with his untamed personality, felt a sense of trepidation. This was a suppression that came from the depths of his bloodline. It was a fear that came from the memories of his soul. The tortoise and snake had already vanished. In this world, there was only a single Jin Dan phenomenon left. Although Su Cheng's apocalyptic Five Thunders was terrifying, it was on the verge of collapse against the Jin Dan phenomenon and could collapse at any moment. None of the cultivators present could recognize the origin of the phenomenon. Lin Xuanji was the only one who widened his eyes and murmured, that is, pausing for a moment. Lin Xuanji seemed to have recalled something as he gasped and exclaimed, "The black tortoise and snake coiling together. That's one of the four sacred beasts, the black tortoise." Legend has it that in the beginning of chaos before the universe was created, there were four sacred beasts, the azure dragon, vermilion bird, white tiger, and black tortoise. In reality, the dragons of the primordial 9 races of Tianhuang mainland inherited the bloodline of the azure dragon. As for the vermilion bird bloodline, it flowed within the bodies of the phoenixes. The four sacred beasts could be considered as the most ancient and terrifying existences in the universe. They could be considered as the ancestors of many demon beasts. Su Zimo had been in seclusion at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley for 20 years. He studied Zen and Buddhism and made use of the profoundness of the Buddhist monasteries to resolve the conflict between immortals and fiends, allowing fire and water to fuse together and the tortoise and snake to coexist. For the past 20 years, apart from strolling, Su Zimo recited sutras. Although it seemed like he was idle, in reality, he had benefited the most. The black tortoise had arrived with the coiling of the tortoise and snake. "Go!" Su Zimo pointed forward with a calm expression. The black tortoise raised its head and moved its limbs, striking forward gently. Crack! 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 Cracks appeared on the 5 divine thunders that Su Cheng conjured. The divine thunders dimmed and collapsed, turning into specks of light that scattered into the void. Su Cheng opened his mouth and spat out a huge mouthful of blood, draining all color from his face. The black tortoise was a sacred beast. It was a sacred beast that was even more frightening than the immortals and immortal beasts of the upper world and had existed since the beginning of chaos. Although it was only a phenomenon, it was not something that Su Cheng's divine thunders could defend against. In the face of the black tortoise phenomenon, Su Cheng felt as insignificant as an ant, and his life was worthless. How frightening! Di-in has finally met a match. Such a phenomenon is unprecedented. Since ancient times, this phenomenon can be ranked in the top 10 of all the top phenomenons. No, it's in the top 5 or even the top 3. In my opinion, the human emperor's chaos ocean is probably the only thing that can fight against it. Su Zimo can definitely leave his name on the Jin Dan phenomenon ranking by tracing back to an ancient expert and creating such a frightening phenomenon. I'm truly envious. In the fight for the Jean Dan phenomenon ranking, if one could create an unprecedented Jean Dan phenomenon through their own comprehension and opportunities and enter the ranking, they would be able to leave their name on the ranking. That was an immense honor that would truly leave one's name in history. For example, many of the ancient phenomenons on the Jean Dan phenomenon ranking were personally written by the top experts of the past. Su Cheng could not be bothered about the severity of his injuries as he took out an elixir from his storage bag and swallowed it. Su Zimo, although I've been defeated, you can dream on if you want to kill me. Su Cheng ignored his injuries and made a prompt decision to turn and flee, declaring, I advise you not to head to Myriad Phenomenon City, or you'll die without a burial ground. A pair of wind wings appeared behind Su Cheng's back that shone with lightning. Amidst a boom, Su Cheng had already vanished from the spot and was far away at a shocking speed. Su Cheng endured the pain in his body and grit his teeth. That's a secret skill of my sect, Zephyr Thunder Escape. Even an ordinary Jinying Jinjuan won't be able to catch up to me. In the Purple Thunder Manual, Su Zimo saw a secret skill that introduced escape techniques called Lightning Escape. It was similar to Zephyr Thunder Escape, but it was a pity that he could not cultivate it yet. Right now, it was simple for him to catch up to Su Cheng. Firstly, he had to release his full cultivation and circulate his dual cores together with ethereal wings to catch up. Secondly, he had to release Blood Escape. Just as Su Zimo was thinking, a warning flashed through his mind. Chapter 709. Su Cheng fled into the distance, and Su Zimo retracted his black tortoise phenomenon as well. Maintaining the Jean Dan phenomenon continuously consumed a lot of spirit energy. Now that the situation was set, there was no need for Su Zimo to continue maintaining the Jean Dan phenomenon to roam freely. However, the moment he retracted his black tortoise phenomenon, he sensed a strong sense of danger that was close at hand. Su Zimo did not have time to take a look. The timing of the attack was impeccable. It was when his defenses were the weakest, and he was the most relaxed. There was no one else within 100 feet of him and Su Cheng in their battle. Su Zimo had not expected that someone would be able to sneak up to him silently and attack, without warning. Instantly, a chilling killing intent enveloped him. If he had not cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness and cultivated his unfathomable spirit perception, Su Zimo would have died on the spot before he could react. This was a perfect assassination. Although he did not take a look, a figure appeared in Su Zimo's mind. Her clothes were blurry, and her appearance was ever-changing. At times, it was a woman, at other times, it was a child, and at other times, it was an old man. It was an assassin of Hidden Death Sect. Only legacy disciples of Hidden Death Sect would have such sharp eyesight and be able to unleash such a terrifying assassination. Su Zimo had fought with the most outstanding successors of Hidden Death Sect twice, and each time, it was extremely dangerous. 20 years ago, Su Zimo killed the thousand-faced assassin beneath the human emperor's palace. To think that the assassin of Hidden Death Sect would come knocking on his door once more in the ancient battlefield, trying to take Su Zimo's life the moment she attacked. Ah! A series of exclamations sounded from the crowd. Young master, first. Brother Su, watch out. Little Fox, Ling Hu, and the others could not make a move in time and could only shout. Lin Xuanji had just taken half a step forward when he stopped in his tracks. It was too late. Nobody could save Su Zimo. The assassin's sword was only inches away from Su Zimo. A deep look of fear flashed through Lin Xuanji's eyes. That was the scary part about legacy disciples of Hidden Death Sect. If he had been in Su Zimo's shoes during this assassination attempt, the odds would have been against him. It might not be a big deal to mess with a normal cultivator. But if you provoke an assassin, unless one of you really dies, you won't be able to rest in peace for a period of time in the future. You don't know when he will appear, so you have to be on guard at all times. He might not be nearby, but he might be right next to you, like a ghost in the dark, waiting for an opportunity to launch a fatal attack. This kind of mental torture was extremely terrifying, and most cultivators would not be able to withstand it. Buzz. At the critical moment, Su Zimo shouted loudly and chanted in Sanskrit. His voice was powerful, and his chi and blood surged like a thunderclap that reverberated endlessly. The musical assassination technique was almost instantaneous. At this juncture of life and death, the musical assassination technique was the only thing that could save Su Zimo. When he heard the Sanskrit, the assassin shuddered. Even legacy disciples of Hidden Death sect were not outstanding in terms of combat strength. The Sanskrit was released in a hurry and might not have much of an impact on Su Cheng. However, it had a huge impact on the assassin of Hidden Death sect. The sword in the assassin's hands paused for a moment. However, right after, the assassin channeled Hidden Death sect's secret skill and suppressed the surging chi and blood in his body. He raised his sword and stabbed straight for Su Zimo's back. The pause did not even last for half a breath. For most cultivators, they could not react in time at all. However, Su Zimo had his spirit perception warning him to begin with. Now that he was presented with this fleeting opportunity, how could he miss it?
Splash.
His chi and blood surged. Instantly, Su Zimo's body expanded by more than 10 feet and his clothes burst, revealing his flesh that seemed like it was made of molten steel. Although the change seemed useless, in reality, due to the growth of Su Zimo's body, the position of his heart had already deviated. TSK. 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 The thin sword in the assassin's hands shone with 6 spirit patterns. It was a connate spirit weapon and was extremely sharp. However, when the thin sword pierced Su Zimo's flesh, it encountered tremendous resistance and let out a strange sound. Although the thin sword was halfway in, it did not hit any vitals. Furthermore, when the assassin wanted to pull out his sword, he realized that the sword in his hands was almost crushed by Su Zimo's flesh and tendons. The next moment, a palm the size of a fan descended from the skies and a huge shadow blanketed the skies. "How dare you?" Su Zimo hollered and retaliated without caring about his injuries. He was truly enraged by the assassination attempt this time round. Thankfully, he still had some strength left in his fight with Su Cheng. If he was truly up against an opponent like Dean, it would be way too fatal with a powerful enemy like the assassin hiding beside him. He had to kill this person with his palm. Right then, right at this moment, the assassin made a prompt decision without any hint of panic in his eyes. He abandoned his thin sword and turned to flee into the distance without touching the ground. The assassin's movement technique was like a phantom and could disappear from one sight if one was not careful. "You're still trying to escape?" Su Zimo pulled out his sword and stuffed it into his storage bag casually. A stream of blood spewed out, but Su Zimo was oblivious to it. His physical body was too strong. It wouldn't take long for him to recover from such an injury. It wouldn't affect him too much. In a flash, Su Zimo chased in the direction of the assassin's escape. "OM.
Ma. Ni. Pa. Mi. Ha."
Su Zimo spoke with a thunderous voice, and the 6 syllables of the damning mantra were released instantly. A single Sanskrit word was enough to affect the assassin. Now that all 6 syllables of the damning mantra were released, an extremely terrifying power was formed in the voids instantly. A Buddhist light flashed, and Sanskrit echoed endlessly. Exclamation point. Against the reverberation of the Sanskrit word, the assassin spat out a mouthful of blood and was forced to reveal himself. "You're far inferior to the 1,000-faced assassin." Before the sentence was finished, Su Zimo had already descended behind the person. Reaching out, he clenched his fist and punched the assassin's back heavily. Snap! The tremendous power almost penetrated him, and the assassin's sternum protruded in a frightening manner. That punch severed the assassin's life completely. Thud! The assassin fell straight to the ground. Su Zimo arrived beside him and kept his storage bag before reaching out to flip the assassin's corpse over. The assassin was dead and could no longer sustain Hidden Death sect's secret skill, so he naturally revealed his true appearance. He was an extremely ordinary person. He could not be any more ordinary. No one would notice someone like that if they were thrown into a crowd. Su Zimo had seen this person's appearance earlier on. However, as long as he closed his eyes, there was no trace of this person's appearance in his mind. Such a person was a natural-born assassin. Unfortunately, he chose the wrong prey. Chapter 710. Although the assassin of Hidden Death Sect was killed, Su Chung of Zephyr Thunder Palace made use of the opportunity to escape. It was already too late for Su Zimo to give chase. In the end, Lin Xuanji did not kill Chaos Essence Sect's Nye Hao and let him go. Enigma Palace had a transcendent status in Tianhuang mainland and would not get into conflict with the other super sections. Unlike Su Zimo, Lin Xuanji was not as fearless in his actions. The remaining cultivators of the three super sects were utterly defeated and had already fled in all directions, vanishing without a trace. Seeing this scene, the surrounding cultivators sighed with emotion. After today's battle, Su Zimo's reputation in the ancient battlefield would be even greater. In the eyes of many cultivators, Di'in was probably the only one who could fight against him. This battle was an eye-opener for many cultivators. Notwithstanding the fact that many cultivators were channeling spirit arts and combat techniques, there were already a few ancient phenomenons that appeared. Chaos Essence Cave, Acheron's Phenomenon, Apocalyptic Five Thunders, Primordial Divine Turtle, Primordial Soaring Serpent, and the extremely mysterious Great Expanding Fog. In fact, at the end, everyone was fortunate enough to witness the creation of a brand new Jean Dan phenomenon. Furthermore, it was so terrifying that it dispelled Apocalyptic Five Thunders with ease. To think that even terrifying existences like Lung Ming, Situ Shi, and the assassin of Hidden Death Sect would die here. What a pity. Don't forget, this is the ancient battlefield where anything can happen. That's right. If the assassin of Hidden Death Sect did not appear at the end, it's still unknown whether Su Chung of Zephyr Thunder Palace would have been able to escape. Many cultivators discussed softly and gradually dispersed. Right now, the battle was over. Even though everyone knew that treasures such as Acheron's painting and Purple Thunder manual were with them, nobody dared to snatch them. Thanks. Su Zimo looked at Lin Xuanji and nodded. Lin Xuanji was different from Little Fatty and Shijian. His identity was sensitive and there was no need for him to help. Even though part of the reason was due to Nye Hao's coercion, given Lin Xuanji's means, would Nye Hao be able to stop him if he really wanted to leave? Lin Xuanji waved it off and said in a deep voice, "The black tortoise phenomenon that you created is extremely powerful and terrifying. It might truly be able to fight against Chaos Ocean, but..." After pausing for a moment, Lin Xuanji said slowly, "Based on what I know, Di'in is even scarier than 100 years ago. Even I don't dare to deduce anything about him. You have to be careful." Su Zimo frowned slightly. It was clear how terrifying Di'in was for Lin Xuanji to be so wary of him.
Don't worry.
"I haven't lived these 20 years in vain," Su Zimo replied. Lin Xuanji nodded and pondered for a moment before saying, "There's one more thing. You have to be careful after entering Myriad Phenomenon City. In the elementary primordial battlefield, you offended almost all the immortal, Buddhist, and fiend sections. In the battle beneath the human sovereign palace, the three sects joined forces and were either injured or killed by you. You can't blame anyone else for that. However, there's a high chance that some sects will remember this and make things difficult for you. Su Chung and Nye Hao are not dead. Now that you're back in Myriad Phenomenon City, Zephyr Thunder Palace and Chaos Essence Sect will definitely find trouble with you." Humph. Su Zimo sneered. "All right, if Su Chung truly dares to come looking for me, I'll send him to Acheron." "There's something you might not know," Lin Xuanji said slowly. "In Myriad Phenomenon City, there are formations and seals left behind by seniors of Enigma Palace. Even if Jining Jinjuan utilizes dermic powers, the outside world will not be able to detect it. In other words, Jining Jinjuan could attack as he pleased in Myriad Phenomenon City without being devoured. That was a little tricky." Lin Xuanji continued. "Zephyr Thunder Palace and Chaos Essence Sect had Jining Jinjuan accompanying them on this trip. Those Jining Jinjuan are not sealers at the end of their lifespans. Their blood qi is strong, and they are in their prime. Once you enter Myriad Phenomenon City, you have to be careful of those Jining Jinjuan causing trouble for you. Su Zimo nodded. In that case, without Jining Jinjuan backing him in Myriad Phenomenon City, it would be easy for him to be taken advantage of. Lin Xuanji said, "All right, you guys clean up the battlefield. I'll make a move first."
Hold on.
As though he recalled something, Su Zimo suddenly called out to Lin Xuanji.
What is it?
Lin Xuanji froze for a moment. Su Zimo asked, "Did you see a group of cultivators?" There were 7 to 8 of them, and they were dressed in extremely ancient attire. They had golden hair, green eyes, and straight noses. Every single one of them was extremely handsome. When he heard that description, Lin Xuanji's expression turned increasingly terrible. "Why are they here?" Lin Xuanji murmured, with a grim expression. Su Zimo asked, "Who are they?" Since Nian Qi was taken away by that group of people, Su Zimo had to know their background. Lin Xuanji asked in return, "You know about the primordial 9 races, right?" Su Zimo nodded. Lin Xuanji said slowly, "That group of people is a branch of the primordial 9 races, the Protoss." Protoss. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat when he heard that. To think that there was a race in Tianhuang mainland that called themselves gods. Either that group of people were crazy, or that race was truly frightening and close to being gods. Lin Xuanji frowned and whispered, "The primordial 9 races almost never appear in the ancient battlefield. To think that someone from the Protoss would enter this generation."
Why are you asking about that?
"Did you see them?" Lin Xuanji asked. "No." Su Zimo shook his head. "However, a friend of mine was taken away by that group of cultivators. I have to rescue her." Lin Xuanji sighed gently and shook his head gently. "You haven't come into contact with those Protoss and don't know how terrifying they are," Lin Xuanji said. "In the eyes of Protoss, killing those of a higher cultivation realm is as easy as eating and drinking. Only killing those of a higher cultivation realm can pique their interest. To put it simply, in front of the god race, your physical body, your vitality, and your close combat advantages will all be gone." Su Zimo did not doubt it at all. From Qing Qing's description, he could vaguely guess how frightening those cultivators were. How frightening was Su Zimo's physique and blood qi. He had never tasted defeat in melee combat. Back in the old temple at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, Su Zimo had the upper hand against Yin. But now, a Protoss had appeared and could match him in terms of blood qi and physique. As one of the primordial 9 races, the Protoss has a noble bloodline and possesses many ancient secret skills. Even Yin doesn't dare to provoke them easily. Lin Xuanji said in a deep voice, "Seems like something big is going to happen in the ancient battlefield now that the Protoss has appeared. No, I've got to hurry back and inform the elders of the sect so that they can be prepared." With that, Lin Xuanji darted away like a wisp of smoke and vanished in the blink of an eye. "Protoss, Protoss," Su Zimo murmured softly with an indeterminate expression. "To think that I would bump into the primordial 9 races so soon." It was no wonder why Nian Qi was so strong back then despite not knowing anything. It was because the blood of the Protoss flowed in her body. Chapter 711. Of course, there were many signs that indicated that even if the bloodline of the Protoss flowed through Nian Qi's body, her background might be even more complicated. In the primordial era, there was naturally a reason why the primordial 9 races ruled over the 10,000 races. If not for the chaotic war in the primordial era that caused the 10,000 races to wither and the primordial 9 races to suffer immense losses, the human race might not have been able to shake the rule of the primordial 9 races even if the fortune of the human race was immense and all the emperors rose together. At the thought of the terrifying combat strength of the ancestral dragon more than 10,000 years ago, 2 supersects and an empire were destroyed because of that. After the ancient war, the primordial 9 races were defeated and the human race became the overlords of Tianhuang mainland. Even so, there were still 9 forbidden grounds for cultivators in Tianhuang mainland. Those 9 forbidden grounds were the habitats of the primordial 9 races. Apart from living beings that belonged to the primordial 9 races, any other living beings that entered would be killed mercilessly. Back then, the Palace Lord of Blood Crow Palace chased Suzimo to the Dragon Bone Valley and alarmed the Divine Dragon. The Palace Lord explained hurriedly that he was a member of the primordial 9 races and was there to protect his life. Unfortunately, the Divine Dragon could tell that the Palace Lord's bloodline was impure, and he was nearly killed on the spot. After a while, Little Fatty and the others cleaned up the battlefield and had a bountiful harvest. "Boss, I'll listen to you as to what we should do next," Little Fatty said. Suzimo said in a deep voice, "Let's find a place to rest for a day. We'll set off for Myriad Phenomenon City tomorrow."
All right.
Everyone nodded. In the ancient battlefield, searching for traces of the Protoss aimlessly was akin to searching for a needle in a haystack. It was completely unrealistic. The appearance of the Protoss in the ancient battlefield meant that they were up to something. They had only discovered Nian Chi by accident. However, the place where they had the highest chance of meeting the Protoss was the center of the ancient battlefield, Myriad Phenomenon City. Myriad Phenomenon City had existed for an unknown period of time and had existed since the ancient era. This ancient city was named by Fairy Ling Long after the myriad phenomenons. She hoped that in the future of the human race, they would be able to create 1,000 or 10,000 Gene Dan phenomenons. By now, there were at least several thousand types of Gene Dan phenomena, if not 10,000. However, there weren't many Gene Dan anomalies that were ranked at the top. Many of them were familiar and had been passed down from ancient times. This day, a group of extremely strange cultivators arrived outside Myriad Phenomenon City. To be precise, there were only 3 cultivators in the group. The other 5 cultivators had clear traces of demon beasts and emitted a faint demonic chi. When demonic beasts stepped into the Pill Dao, although they could transform into human form and even speak human language, they were unable to completely erase the traces of demonic beasts. Only after condensing the primordial spirit would they be able to communicate with the heavens and earth and absorb the essence of the sun and moon. Only then would the demonic beasts be able to completely transform into human form, conceal their aura, and blend into the human race. This kind of demonic beast was very difficult to detect. Therefore, they were called demons. Among the 5 demonic beasts, 3 of them looked ferocious. They were burly and had long fur all over their bodies. Their eyes were fierce and their demonic chi was dense. As for the other 2, they were both women. One of them was tall and slender, with long and slender legs. She looked very elastic. The other young lady was in her prime. Her appearance was peerless, and she wore a fiery red robe that partially covered her body. Her outfit was provocative and bold, and when she blinked her big watery eyes, it was as if they could steal a person's soul. The young girl in her prime attracted at least half of the gazes of the group as they walked over. The reason why this group of people was strange was not because of the 5 demonic beasts or the young girl in her prime. In the ancient battlefield, many sect disciples and powerful paragons had their own mounts or spirit beasts. That was also a part of their combat strength. Prior to this, some cultivators even rode 7 WIRMS into Myriad Phenomenon City with an unparalleled aura, let alone the 5 demonic beasts. WIRMS were pure-blooded ferocious beasts and looked much stronger than the 5 demonic beasts before them. There were also female cultivators with peerless auras who descended into Myriad Phenomenon City on the backs of snow condors. There were even spirit carriages that tore through the air, and vaguely, men could be seen lying on the knees of beauties, drinking and having fun in a carefree manner. There were many beautiful women following behind the spirit carriages. Everywhere they passed, countless flower petals were scattered and their fragrance filled the air, causing everyone to be envious. In terms of grandeur, this group of people truly did not amount to much. What was truly strange about these people was the attitude of the 3 cultivators and the 5 demonic beasts. They chatted happily and did not seem like they were enslaved. Instead, they seemed like good friends. Finally, someone exclaimed softly and sized up one of the green-robed cultivators with a puzzled expression, murmuring, "Could that person be Su Zimo and the others finally arrived at this place after a long journey. Myriad Phenomenon City was like a primordial beast that sat there motionlessly. No one knew how much history it had witnessed, and it exuded an ancient aura. Beneath Myriad Phenomenon City, everyone raised their heads. The bricks of the city walls were greenish-black in color, and there were traces of sharp blades on them, as though they were trying to convey something. "It's so tall," Little Fox exclaimed. Everyone was as insignificant as ants beneath the ancient city walls. "This ancient city is truly grand," Ching Ching could not help but exclaim as well. Ling Hu rolled his eyes and glared at the gates of Myriad Phenomenon City, pursing his lips. "It's a pity that this ancient city doesn't have a city gate, and its defenses are way too weak. The beast stampede will be able to invade with ease." "You're wrong." Su Zimo smiled and shook his head. "Myriad Phenomenon City doesn't need a city gate at all. Given the treacherous environment of the ancient battlefield, Myriad Phenomenon City is probably the only ancient city that doesn't need a city gate."
Ah.
Ling Hu was stunned for a moment, confused. Su Zimo pointed beneath his feet and said slowly, "This city is where the most outstanding cultivators of the Jin Dan realm of Tianhuang mainland are gathered. Of the hundreds of thousands of cultivators who entered the ancient battlefield, there are at least 100,000 of them who can make it to Myriad Phenomenon City. With that number, no demon beasts, beast stampede, or living being would dare to attack Myriad Phenomenon City. That's purely courting death." Ching Ching extended her leg and kicked Ling Hu, mocking, "Hey, go and trigger a beast stampede. I'd like to see how you're going to invade Myriad Phenomenon City." Ling Hu had an awkward expression and coughed softly, hurriedly. Right then, a voice sounded from the city walls and caused a commotion. "Su Zimo." "That's Su Zimo."
Ah?
"What did you say?" "That monster incarnate in history who obtained the inheritance of the human emperor's palace, had twin phenomenons, destroyed Glass Palace and defeated Suchim?" "That's him." "There's no way I'm wrong."
It really seems to be him.
Dressed in green robes, one of them is a legacy disciple of Tomb Sect, and the other is a legacy disciple of Puppet Sect. "This is going to be interesting. I heard that many people in the city have their eyes on him and want to take his life. Hee, they must be eyeing his treasures, right?" On the city walls, on both sides of the streets and in the tall buildings, gazes could be seen one after another. Some were envious, some were respectful, some were hostile, but most of them were gloating. Chapter 712. Who in the world did not know him? While there might be many people in the ancient battlefield who had not seen Su Zimo before, there were only a handful who had not heard of his name. Right now, Su Zimo was second only to Di-In and was extremely popular. The moment he stepped into Myriad Phenomenon City, he caused a commotion. Under countless gazes, Su Zimo was calm and composed. Little Fatty and Shijian, on the other hand, were a little more uneasy. None of them were easy to deal with if they could traverse through all the dangers and reach Myriad Phenomenon City. There were hundreds of thousands of cultivators who entered the ancient battlefield. In the end, only about 100,000 of them made it to Myriad Phenomenon City alive. Being stared at by so many gazes would naturally cause one to feel immense pressure that ordinary cultivators would not be able to withstand. Ching Ching frowned slightly. Instinctively, Little Fox hid behind Su Zimo. The golden lion had a grim expression and tried its best to retract its demonic chi. No matter what, they were demon beasts after all, and felt uneasy being sized up by so many paragons of the human race. Ling Hu was carefree and ignored the gazes around him as he entered the city with a swagger. When Monkey sensed the hostility, not only was he fearless, he even bared his fangs and glared back with a ferocious gaze. He had a prideful personality, and apart from Su Zimo, he did not care about anyone else. That demon monkey is truly arrogant. Forget it. After all, he was brought here by the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island. It's better if we don't provoke him. Humph. Let's see how long more Su Zimo can keep smiling. He's already made too many enemies before he even fought for the Jean Dan phenomenon ranking. Someone will definitely find trouble with him. A series of discussions broke out in the crowd. Right then, a group of cultivators walked over from the opposite direction, and the crowd parted to form a path. Su Zimo frowned slightly. There were dozens of cultivators in this group, and they came from 3 different sections. Among them, there were even cultivators transformed from demon beasts. They all wore different clothes, and the sect medallions hanging from their waists were also different in appearance. Su Zimo had seen one of the tokens on Su Cheng's body. Zephyr Thunder Palace. Outside the Astral Dragon Sputum Lair, there were many casualties among the cultivators of Zephyr Thunder Palace. Su Cheng escaped with severe injuries and nearly died. Now that this group of people had come knocking, they were definitely hostile. The other 2 groups of cultivators were from the Purple Firmament Sect and Cool Breeze Temple. The 3 super sects had gathered. Hee, what did I say? The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. This Su Zimo has offended so many forces. He's dead for sure. It shouldn't be a big deal. Killing is prohibited within the city. These cultivators can't possibly start a fight on the streets.
Just you wait and see, humph.
There were many cultivators around, waiting to watch a great show. Su Zimo stopped. His eyes narrowed as he looked at the dozens of people walking over. Fufu. Before the leader of Cool Breeze Temple, perfected being Jean Dan, arrived, he chuckled and cupped his fists from afar, declaring loudly, "I'm Duan Qingping. I've heard a lot about you, fellow Daoist Su. It's a pleasure to meet you." The perfected being Jean Dan named Duan Qingping had a fake smile. His words were merely pleasantries. The leader of Purple Firmament Sect, perfected being Jean Dan, sized up Su Zimo from head to toe. A moment later, he nodded and said expressionlessly, "I'm Wu Feng." So, it's the 2 of them. This is going to be interesting. Duan Qingping and Wu Feng are both the top disciples of the 2 super sects. The cultivators of Zephyr Thunder Palace had cold gazes and did not conceal the killing intent in their eyes. Against this group of people, Su Zimo did not even try to feign civility. Right from the beginning, he remained silent with a cold gaze. Monkey and the others glared at the opposite party with extreme hostility. Fufu. Duan Qingping chuckled and waved it off gently. Fellow Taoists, there's no need to be nervous. Apart from Myriad Elephant Palace, fighting is prohibited in the city. There's no need to make things so tense. Everyone relax. Su Zimo remained silent. He did not doubt the fact that fighting was prohibited in the city. After all, without those prohibitions, the paragons gathered in Myriad Phenomenon City were all prideful, and a huge battle might break out at the slightest disagreement. At that time, more than half of them would be dead and rivers of blood would flow before they could even participate in the fight for the Jean Dan phenomenon ranking. Even so, Duan Qingping and the others must have other motives for coming here. The smile on Duan Qingping's face did not diminish as he swept his gaze across Monkey, Ling Hu, and the others before continuing. However, there's no restriction on killing demon beasts in the city. Su Zimo raised his brow with a murderous expression. Were these people here to attack Monkey and the others? They were already sworn brothers. None of them belonged to the other's spirit beast. In Su Zimo's heart, Monkey and the others were his kin. Anyone who coveted his kin would have to die. Sensing Su Zimo's killing intent, Duan Qingping chuckled once more. Fellow Daoist Su, don't be hasty. As cultivators, we naturally won't attack your spirit beasts. However, Duan Qingping changed the topic. It's not convenient for us to attack for fear of hurting our relationship. However, we can let our demon beasts spar with one another. How about that? With that said, Duan Qingping turned slightly, and a tall man walked out from behind him. That person exuded a rich demonic qi and had a fierce gaze. His body was muscular, and his exposed upper body was filled with steel-like muscles. It was a frightening sight. Duan Qingping replied casually, "This is a spirit beast hatched from a spirit beast egg that I found by accident when I entered the cave abode. There's nothing special about it." A beautiful woman walked out from Purple Firmament sect at the side. She had a slender figure and a slender waist, swaying gracefully. Wu Feng pointed to the woman and said, "This is a spirit beast that I reared. It's a demon beast of the snake race, and is very ordinary as well. You can choose any one of your spirit beasts as an opponent to spar with." Su Zimo sneered internally. Be it monkey or Linghu, they were not spirit beasts that he reared. In his eyes, a spar as such was naturally extremely laughable. Su Zimo was about to reject when a hairy palm appeared on his shoulder. Monkey stood out and rubbed his palms together with a grin. "I was just feeling a little itchy. I'll spar with them." Since Monkey had already made his decision, Su Zimo did not stop him. A look of joy flashed through Duan Qingping and Wu Feng's eyes. Duan Qingping asked with a smile, "Fellow Taoist, which one of our two ferocious beasts do you intend to challenge?" "How can it be so troublesome? Let the both of them come at me together." Monkey spat out with disdain in his eyes and said loudly, "You must have a death wish." The burly man's expression darkened instantly, and the demonic chi around him intensified. He. The snake woman laughed hysterically, but her eyes were incomparably cold as she said coldly, "Demon monkey, don't regret this." End of chapter. Chapter 713. As though he was afraid that Su Zimo would regret it, Duan Qingping said hurriedly, "Since that's the case, let's have them spar." Although it was said to be a spar, anyone could tell that once the spirit beasts from both sides started fighting, blood would definitely splatter everywhere and neither side would hold back. Duan Qingping and Wu Feng exchanged glances and could see the joy in each other's eyes. Just now, they had intentionally pretended to be weak and described their spirit beasts as ordinary, to think that they would be able to deceive Su Zimo so easily. Duan Qingping sneered internally. "Although the title of the strongest monster incarnate in history is resounding, I think that's all there is to it. Even that demon monkey he's rearing is so impulsive, as though it's retarded." Duan Qingping and Wu Feng were confident that they would definitely win this battle and had relaxed expressions. On the other side, Su Zimo's gaze was calm and as deep as the ocean. No one could tell what he was thinking at all. Little Fatty and Shi Jian wore strange looks on their faces. They had witnessed monkeys combat strength with their own eyes. Although the demon monkey's bloodline seemed ordinary, its combat strength was not inferior to pure-blooded ferocious beasts. The golden lion kept a straight face and tried its best to pretend to be worried. Ching Ching and Little Fox tried their best to suppress their laughter. On the other hand, Linghu grinned widely with a sinister smile. He looked at the burly man and snake woman as though he was looking at two corpses. They knew Monkey better. If Monkey was truly forced out of the mysterious power in his bloodline and entered a berserk state, it would definitely be a disaster. At that time, Monkey would not recognize anyone and would even throw a punch at Su Zimo the moment he caught sight of him. Before long, a large empty space was created on the long street. The number of cultivators gathered increased, and there was a sea of people. Monkey had already entered the arena and was stretching his neck to stretch his muscles. The burly man and snake woman formed a triangle and stood opposite each other. The burly man said slowly with a mocking expression, "Demon monkey, it's not too late for you to regret now." "Regret?" Monkey rolled his eyes and strode forward, charging towards the burly man while cursing, "Regret your mother's head."
Boom.
Monkey protected his chest with his left hand and clenched his right hand into a fist. Instantly, his flesh and blood expanded. The fist swelled up and turned into a large greenish-black seal that descended from the sky. The air was crushed by this huge force, and there was even a loud explosion. Sanguine Ape Seal. It was a killer move from the mystic classic of the 12 Demon Kings of the Great Wilderness. Other than Su Zimo, only Monkey knew.
Ah.
The burly man had wanted to retort, but this terrifying aura forced him to swallow his words. There was even a faint smell of blood around the seal. Hiss! The tall and sturdy man knew how powerful this was. He sucked in a breath of cold air, and his expression changed greatly. Crackle! The The burly man's tendons and bones rang together as his blood chi surged. After Monkey attacked, he did not hesitate to revert to his true form. After forming a core, although demons could take on human form, they could only unleash their peak combat strength when they reverted to their true forms. A gigantic demonic beast appeared on the spot. It looked like a tiger. With a whoosh, a pair of wings spread out from its back. Its claws and teeth were sharp, and its gaze was ferocious. Its ferocious aura was monstrous.
Ah!
It's the Cheongchi. The Cheongchi is one of the 4 ancient ferocious beasts. It's almost impossible to capture and tame it alive. Duan Qingping sure is lucky. Which paragon or elite that could become the top disciples of Super Sex did not have opportunities or encounters? Duan Qingping is so scheming. To think that he would hide the information of the spirit beast. Seems like the demon monkey is doomed. On the other side, the snake woman seemed to have sensed the immense pressure and reverted to her true form as well. A gigantic anaconda coiled up from the ground and extended its upper body. It was 1,000 feet tall and had gigantic scales the size of wash basins. The snake's head was almost touching the firmaments as it flicked its tongue. It looked down at Monkey with a cold gaze, and its gigantic tail swayed, emitting a nauseating stench. The snake's tail was toxic. The cultivators in the vicinity held their breaths hurriedly. Everyone focused their gazes, and were even more shocked. The snake's tail was forked like a pair of metal hooks that shone with a cold glint as though they could pierce through everything. Heavens, that's a hook snake. It's another pure-blooded ferocious beast. Duan Qingping and the other party came prepared. Su Zimo's demon beast is dead for sure. Even in the ancient battlefield, pure-blooded ferocious beasts were rare. Even if one encountered one, it was extremely difficult to capture them alive and force them to swear a blood oath. Now that 2 pure-blooded ferocious beasts were up against an ordinary monkey, wouldn't the demon monkey be torn apart alive?
Bang!
Monkey had already arrived before the Cheongchi, and the gigantic seal slammed down heavily. The Cheongchi raised its arms, and its blood chi surged into the skies. It took the blow head-on with a dull thud, as though it was defeated. There was a momentary pause. The next moment, the crowd was in an uproar. Right in front of countless gazes, the massive body of the Cheongchi was sent flying by an inconspicuous demon beast with a single punch. It fell onto the long street and rolled far away before coming to a stop. How terrifying was that burst of strength? What was the background of that demon monkey? How could it send a pure-blooded ferocious beast, one of the 4 ferocious beasts, flying? Psst! Psst! An evil gust of wind blew. The gigantic snake tail was like a heavenly pillar that swept over. Before it arrived, sand and pebbles were already flying in a frightening manner. Monkey did not move at all. Channeling his blood chi, he reached out with both arms and opened his gigantic palms, grabbing the incoming snake tail in his palms.
Bang!
Instantly, the stone tiles beneath Monkey's feet exploded. However, Monkey did not budge at all against the full-powered attack of the hook snake. A cold glint flashed through the hook snake's eyes. Naturally, she was only the first to attack with her snake tail. The true killing move was the snake hooks at the back. The reason why their lineage was known as the hook snake was because their most frightening attacks were on the hooks at their tails. The pair of hooks were incomparably sharp and could even pierce through perfect spirit weapons when cultivated to their limits. Not only that, the hooks were laced with lethal poison. Most living beings would turn into a pool of blood within 10 breaths if they were pierced by those hooks. The snake tail swept over like a stone pillar or a steel whip. However, after Monkey grabbed it with both hands, the snake tail went limp instantly. The hooks at its tail were unusually agile and pierced towards Monkey's legs viciously, as though they were alive. Exclamation point. Monkey could not dodge in time, and 2 bloody holes appeared on his legs. Psst! The hook snake laughed. In her eyes, Monkey was already a dead man. Even if a pure-blooded ferocious beast could last a little longer, it would die sooner or later from the corrosion of the lethal poison. Monkey's expression was unchanged. His legs went limp, and he nearly fell. However, the blood glint in his eyes intensified, and he straightened his body instantly, expanding as he reared his head and howled. With that, Monkey was completely enraged. End of chapter. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.